Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Everyone's settled in. Today we were seeing our big sister off to the best city in the world. Nancy was on her way to Washington to study law. She was coming from a small town of about 10,000 people, a big village where a lot of people knew each other. They used to keep the doors open. It's a little scary now. I graduated from school with a gold medal, so I was preparing to pass only one subject. The road is not closed 170 kilometers. Stephen specially drove himself to give the last instructions to his daughter on the road. She was to stay at the aunt of her father's own sister, Nina. She's not a bad woman, but she's had a hard life. She'll tell you if she wants to. Study, daughter. Good. Behave yourself. Washington is Washington. There's a lot of temptation there. Don't drink alcohol. It makes people weak, loosens their tongues, and makes them do irreparable things. Also, never tell others too much about yourself. Remember that in moments of envy, the blind begin to see, the mute speak, of the deaf hear. Think before you do anything. Nina, consult or call home. Hungry, don't go hungry. Dress warmer. Nancy had heard it all 100 times, but she was afraid of her father, so she listened and did not cross. Stephen had the character of his grandfather, Nick. He was a very tough guy. He'd say what he wanted to say. She was still young and heard what happened between Nina and her father. Only nobody wanted to talk about it. The father hugged his daughter, kissed her, wagged his finger, waited until the tail of the train disappeared around the corner, and went home. It was the first time 17-year-old Nancy had left the small town alone. At everything, looking wide-eyed, she believed that a happy life was beginning for her, and it would be much more interesting than the one before. She had a 25-hour journey ahead of her. So, taking a book and taking apple out of her bag, the girl plunged into reading. At short stops, according to her father, it wasn't safe for her to go out. It was possible to miss the train, so she watched all the huge movement of people from the top shelf. The money was kept in a secret place, and on pain of death, she could not take it out until she reached Nina. But how many people are there, thought Nancy? Auntie, give me some money for bread. A boy of about 9 with a grimy face and huge brown eyes looked at her. She came back, was for the money, but immediately remembered her father's precept. Then, taking out a small purse, where there was $30, she decided to give some of this money to the child. But not having time to open the purse, she lost his leg, snatched the money from his hands, and ran away in an unknown direction. Caught in a large, unfamiliar city, the girl felt lonely and lost. Around everything was alien people who did not say hello to each other, houses, streets, and even life, which made these people hurry and on the go, talking on the phone. She stood and cried until Aunt Nina came up to her. "Why are we crying?" Cheerfully, she asked. The boy snatched the money from her hands and ran away. "Took a lot." "No, just $30, but it's a pity." "Of course it's a pity. You can't open your mouth in Washington. This isn't the country where everybody knows everybody." "Yeah, my dad warned me, but I relaxed." And she's flapping her nose at herself again for forgetting her instructions so quickly. "All right, don't cry. Let's go home and rest, and the world will be more beautiful and kinder." The apartment that opened to her gaze was luxurious by the standards of the village. It resembled a page out of a designer's catalog. Good quality heavy furniture in the bedroom bed, covered from the overbearing coverlet, carved wadded nightstands with real ones. There were lamps on them, huge windows with beautiful curtains hanging on them. "Am I in a fairy tale?" Nancy asked excitedly. "What a fairy tale, my girl. Nothing has changed for a long time. Everything has gone out of fashion already. Why change such beauty? Are your aunts so cozy and clean? Daddy said you like cleanliness? Who doesn't? One rarely wants to sit in filth." Nancy noticed the table set, the decanter of wine, and the plates. The tablecloth was snow white, touched it with her hand, made sure it was crimson. "Go take a shower out of the way, sit at the table, talk." Coming out of the shower, the girl took out of the bag gifts from home: pickled cucumbers and tomatoes, mushrooms, their everyday jam. Immediately home smelled, and covering her face with her palms, Nina cried. That evening at the table, two relatives sat for a long time. It was already far past midnight when they, wiping their tears and hugging each other, went to bed. Nancy could not sleep for a long time. She was impressed by her aunt's story, having finally learned what had happened many years ago. She was surprised and amazed at her grandfather's cruelty. Dreamed, and as her father had said, her tongue was untied and the family secret was revealed. Nina herself began to tell. Apparently, it had long been a huge burden on her soul. We were 4 children in the family, 2 boys, 2 girls. We were the youngest. Stephen was father second, and the older brother was Alex. Father Nick, your grandfather, was very strict, even sometimes violent. Mom Kelly, your grandmother, was a very gentle and kind-hearted woman. Dad, of course, took her under his thumb. She was dutiful, obedient, an excellent hostess. No one could bake her best pies. When I finished the 8th grade, a new boy came to our school, so handsome. His father was a military man who played sports. They said they wouldn't be here long. I fell in love with him in 9th grade. My mind went crazy. I started getting C's. My father was called to school, but he didn't beat me up. He just warned me. Look, Nina, if you bring it underground, I'll kick you out. It'll be a pity. You're my daughter after all. Well, you remember to get rid of the shame. I nodded my head because I wasn't going to bring anything in Podol. I just wanted to love. We spent the whole 9th grade looking at each other. And in 10th grade, we started dating in September. Everyone was jealous of me. He was a really good-looking guy. They called him Sam. He invited me home for Christmas. That's where it happened. My father noticed the change in me right away. Only he couldn't imagine that his youngest could disobey him. And after winter vacation, the Sam family left. It was a tragedy. We said goodbye like I was seeing him off to the front. I said goodbye and hung on his neck, as usual, and promised to write and call. But I still haven't received a single letter. And in February, it became clear that I was pregnant. Blood from the rear in my veins, that I will tell the family. I decided that I'd finish school in time, and then we'd decide. I was very thin, my belly was not visible at all. I passed my exams, got my diploma. And after the graduation party, my father called me and looking directly into my eyes, asked me if you were pregnant. When I answered yes, I even squeezed my eyes shut, but he just quietly told me, "Tonight, pack your clothes and winter clothes too. And tomorrow morning, I'll put you on the bus, even give you some money. I'm not interested in anything else. This is the life you chose for yourself, so you can survive." How I cried and apologized, but he was relentless. Stephen stood up for me, but my father had his tail between his legs. In the morning, he gave me money, put me on a bus. I saw my mom running, but he stopped her and dragged her back home. From that moment on, she began to wither in pain. I got a job at the factory. They gave me a dormitory, but my son was never born. I was in a hurry to catch a streetcar, and from my height, I fell on my stomach. I lost consciousness. How long was I lying there? I don't know, but when I woke up in the hospital, I realized that the baby was gone. When I came home, my mother was sitting in my room. She came to me secretly from my father and brought me some money and food. "You don't look well, daughter. I lost the baby. It's a shame." I could see that Mom was speaking sincerely, so that Father did not say, "I cannot not see you, so I will come as much as possible. And you call my grandmother again. She'll tell me everything." I could hardly hold back my tears. Mom looked bad, old, bent over. She hugged me with her warm arms. I felt so good in her arms. "What will you tell your father?" I asked then. "I don't know. I'll think of something." "He doesn't need to know the truth," my brave mother said. She came again 2 months later. She looked even worse than before. But when our eyes met, we threw ourselves into each other's arms. I just felt like a little loner. I wanted to be with her so badly. "Thank you for coming out to me again. I miss you so much. I miss you too, honey. And maybe Daddy will forgive me and let me come home now." Did Mom shake her head? No, he's not going to change his mind. The stubborn devil had a temper on everyone. Saying goodbye, I asked my mom, "Will you come again?" "Of course, sweetheart. You bet I will." I kissed her on the cheek and she disappeared out the door. For a year, my mom came to see me, and it was the most joyful time of my life. Later, I found out that my father was giving her scandals, guessing that my mother was coming to see me. It's time, let her come home already. And she doesn't even have a child to take care of. What daughter are you talking about? He asked. Don't play dumb. I'm talking about our daughter. We don't have a daughter like that, and we never had one. Enough of this, arching his eyebrows at the corner of his father's face. The conversation ended, and the father's stony heart didn't even flinch. A month later, my neighbor came to visit me. Kelly is really bad. Try to repent. Maybe my father will let me see her. She said goodbye and left, and I hurried home the next day. I had all kinds of thoughts in my head. But I had to get inside and see my mom. What if she died? My father can't forbid me to see her. I didn't walk from the bus stop. I ran home, but I was in such a hurry. When I entered the house, I could feel my heart pounding. My mom was almost there. But my father saw me and didn't even raise an eyebrow or say anything. I came to dine at Mom's, I said in a trembling voice. The brothers were silent. She was crying. No one objected. Father, forgive me, Dad. I tried to smooth the edges. I don't have a daughter like you, and your mother is dying. You're the one who shortened her life with your slutty behavior. I want my mom. This is my home too, and you have no right to do this. She loves me. How can you love someone who's long gone? Go away. You should have thought of that when you were moving your legs in front of a man. And now your mother doesn't want you. You're a very abusive father. And if my mom finds out you kept me out, she won't forgive you. And I won't forgive you now. And I don't need your forgiveness. And he slammed the door. I felt like I was in some horrible dream. My father didn't realize what he was doing. The man overwhelmed everyone, made them tremble. I didn't know how to behave around my own father. He had brothers, but none of them possessed even a fraction of the cruelty of character and that certainty of rightness. He had a strong streak. If he cut someone out of his life, it was for good. I didn't want to leave, so I went to my grandmother's to spend the night. And in the morning, my mom wouldn't. That's all I said. And then I told myself, and I was left an orphan. My father died a long time ago, and my mom just today. I watched the funeral from the side, but I was afraid to go near. I didn't want to cause a scandal at such a sad event. I went to my mom's grave after everyone had left. How long did I stand there? I don't know, but it started to get dark, and I hurried to the bus. In the evening, already at home, I thought about everything that had happened to me since that moment when my life had turned into hell. I had a lot to think about, a lot to realize. After all, I was about to turn 20, and I had nothing, no education, no family. I didn't even have a corner of my own. I paid a price for a love that wasn't mutual. A very high price. It's a great feeling for which we make sacrifices. I tried to make the person I loved happy. I became the unhappiest person in love. And I know for a fact that Sam didn't appreciate my sacrifice. And now losing my mother meant I had no one left after betraying my father and losing my mom. And I broke. From a young woman, watch yourself, I turned into a shadow who was happy with nothing. I dreamed of getting out of this depression and going to the most beautiful city in the world. To do something to make my mom proud. I'm so sorry, Nancy cried. I didn't realize my grandfather was so cruel. I found out later that he cheated on Mom. When his brothers complained to him, when they stood up for Mom, he'd say, "If you get married, you'll understand me. If the wife is sick all the time, what's a man to do?" That's how simple it was for him. Lifelong fidelity is the ideal to which everyone aspires. It's worth the effort, Nina said with a sigh. At any time, constancy was worth its weight in gold, and Grandpa wasn't one of them. They were an ordinary family. They rarely quarreled. But now I understand why his wife always yielded to him. He felt he was the boss. My mom always wanted me to study, so she made a commitment to get a higher education, find a good job, and be happy. After all, that's what my mom wanted. She wasn't afraid to go to Washington. After my mom died and I confronted my dad, I wasn't scared of anything anymore. The little girl had grown up and was sure that everything would work out. I graduated from the Correspondence Institute of Light Industry. I got a job in a small atelier. And then, when a new director came, he turned that small outlier into a fashion house. And he made a simple pig his wife. Mike and I lived happily for 5 years. They were the best years of my life. I felt beautiful, loved, and the happiest. Imagine, he became ill while speaking at a meeting, grabbing life by the heart as he woke up and collapsed. The ambulance came quickly, but there was no one left to save him. A massive heart attack. I realized it's dangerous to tell everyone how happy you are. You should thank whoever gives you that happiness. I wanted everyone to know how happy I was and how much Mike loved me. And happiness loves silence. Did you come to bury your grandfather? Nancy asked. I wanted to, but he warned everyone not to let me near his coffin. I went to his grave later with my mother. I moved in, left flowers, and left. Then a year later, I came to my parents' house, where a lot had changed in the meantime. It's either good or nothing but the truth about the dead. Well, if you tell the truth, everyone's face had changed. Everyone began to live without regard for that tyrant. After all these years, I'm back in my family again. It's just a shame my mommy wasn't there anymore. If someone else had told me that story, I wouldn't have believed it, Nancy said quietly. I'm sorry, no. All right, tribe, go get some rest. And she kissed the top of the girl's head. I remembered everything, told you, and you know, I felt better. I fell asleep. It was almost morning before Nancy got up for lunch. Nina had already left for work, and pancakes with strawberries, jam, and coffee were waiting for her in the kitchen. Breakfast didn't take long, and quickly putting her purse and papers together, she headed to the university. Oh, medalists with admiration, said the girl who accepted the documents. We need such students. Only now, seeing this huge, beautiful building. Nancy realized what a grand scale it was. Am I really going to study here? She thought all those days left before the exams. She was honestly studying books, looking at maps, trying to live up to her title of medalist. Day X came. The students crowded outside the auditorium that had history exam written on the door and were afraid to go in first. Nancy boldly opened the door and asked permission to enter. Girl, your courage is to be envied, said the history teacher with a smile. Thank you, but to be honest, my knees are shaking. Teachers in the committee looked at each other, surprised by such spontaneity. Hold the ticket. Hands were not shaking, there was no more excitement. I read through everything, looked at the ticket. The teacher wrinkled his nose. Prepare yourself, you can go to the cards. They will help you. I'm already prepared, even so how cocky are you? Well, it's just that I know this ticket. Well, we'll see. Nancy talked for a long time. There's so much extra material to learn. By the end of her story, the panel looked at her with great surprise. Well, you do know the ticket. Well done. Take your time. Now we will see how this medalist is 100%. There were 3 additional questions. Nancy coped with the first one quite well, but the second and third ones were a bit confusing. That's why, when they announced the grade, she heard that she got a B, although the committee had mixed opinions on this. But the chairman was supportive, and the grade of 4 became final. For Nancy, a B was as good as a D. It meant that she had failed to fulfill the status of a medalist and would have to pass all the subjects she was much worse prepared for, hoping for an A in history. The whole evening the girl cried, and no entreaties of her aunt could not affect her. Having passed all the exams and scored 16 points, she didn't pass the competition. What are you going to do? Aunt Nina asked regretfully. You're going home. No. I'll get a job and study if I don't get in next year. Then I'll go home and work at the school as a janitor. I bet they've never had a medalist mop the floors. That'd be a laugh. I'd take you to work for me. No, I can't sew, and I don't really like it. If only to scrub floors. Why are you picking on the floors? There's plenty of people who want to do it without you. I'll have to think about it. Why don't you take Monday off at Washington? Take a look around. I'll try to think of something. Nina's first thought was to get her a job with a secretary in some law firm. She'd gotten a little used to Washington, but she couldn't find anything for her. No one wanted yesterday's schoolgirls who didn't know the secretary of this business. The week was coming to an end, and Nancy felt she would have to go home. Nancy, I met an acquaintance of mine today. He and Mike were great friends. He had an accident a year ago. His wife died in a car accident, and his son was hurt too. But he seems to have had a lot of surgery, and he's walking. But his eyes, which have already had 2 surgeries, can't see yet. Anyway, he's looking for a caregiver for his son. He fired the woman a week ago. His son complained that she was yelling at him, and he thought she told on the boxes. I don't really like the idea, of course. Why not? Nancy wondered. It's a job like any other. I'm allowed to work there. What confuses me is that you have to live there. Said the auntie to live. Why? Because Liam works a lot too. She comes in late, and the guy needs constant care. And they have a big apartment. Nina smiled when she heard this question. He's got a huge house, a staff of servants. Will you only have to take care of Thomas, and when you have to give an answer? Liam will call tonight. Well, I don't want to live there either, Nancy sighed. Fine, agreed Nina. We'll find something else. And she hugged her niece. Liam, as promised, called around 10 p.m. What have you decided? No, Liam, she doesn't want to live with you. Find someone else brave enough. Nina, let's make a deal. Have her come tomorrow and start work. I'll have my chauffeur drive her home and bring her back in the morning. It's not very convenient for me, of course, but it will give me time to find someone else. All right, I'll come with her, Nina agreed. She doesn't know Washington well, and she'll feel more comfortable with me. That's fine. I'll see you tomorrow at 9:00. Now all she could think about was tomorrow. She lay there, hypnotizing the clock. The hands crept so slowly that she sometimes thought they were standing still. But at exactly 7:00 a.m. she was awakened. Nina, get up. They're waiting for us. We should have more breakfast. They arrived at the Two Omsks 15 minutes early. When they saw the huge 3-story house, Nancy was amazed. She had seen such houses on TV with oligarchs. She was surprised by the beautifully trimmed trees in the form of spheres, flowers in fancy flower beds. Everything spoke of skillful hands and the love that went into everything she saw. The huge grand staircase led to the 2nd floor, but she and Nina stopped at the first and waited for the owner. What's he like? Nancy thought. Serious, fat, maybe even bald. I mean, he's the same age as my father. A tall, tanned, athletic-looking man in jeans came running down the stairs. His short, stylish haircut made him look young. His whole appearance said that the owner of this body was working hard on it. And if you could lift up his pole, all 6 cubes on his abs were visible. The man was very attractive. One could only guess how many female hearts wanted to break through to his hot body. Nancy caught herself thinking in a way that was completely out of character for her. But the closer Liam got, the faster the blood rushed through her body. Hello, Nina. And who is this beautiful creature? The girl looked amazingly alive, real. She had not yet realized what kind of impression she could make on men. That was the secret of her attractiveness. No one had ever thought her stupid. At almost 18, she understood a lot of things and was a rare combination of a cute face and a smart head. Hello, Liam. I'm Nancy. Hello, beautiful child. Let's go and meet Thomas. Yes, of course, but I'm a little nervous. The girl smiled. You shouldn't be. No one will hurt you here. He's a good kid. He just needs the attention and help of another person. But I really hope that the 3rd operation will help him to become independent. While they were talking, they reached Thomas's room. Liam knocked and entered only when it was heard. Come in. The door fell away noiselessly, revealing to the girl's gaze a subdued young man. Very much like her father, only more frail. Thomas, you'll have another nurse today. Who? Presenting himself from the couch, the young man asked. Nancy boldly approached Thomas, took his hand and said, I am Nancy. Let's be friends. It will be easier for us to find common ground that way. The young man broke out in a smile, showing dimples on his cheeks, and asked, Can I call you Nancy? I like that name. But if you don't mind, of course. Daria aged the girl as if tasting the new name. Do I like it too? No one's ever called me that before. Will you be the first? Can I give you a hug? Nancy turned to Nina and Liam, looking to them for support. Nina nodded and the girl hurried to answer. Of course, I hugged Thomas. Liam. She turned to the master of the house. I would like to know the front of my duties. Nancy will remember and not be a servant. You don't have to keep Thomas's room clean. There are special people for that. You don't have to cook him a meal. Other people do all that. You have to walk with him, read to him. If he asks you to help him eat, give him his pills on time, help him get dressed. It would be good if you knew how to give injections, because the nurse only comes in the morning and he still has to put one in the evening. The previous caregiver was an excellent nurse, but a disgusting person. And I am looking for a caregiver specifically with a medical background. I don't have a medical degree, Nancy said, but I know how to give shots because I went to medical school. I gave all my kids shots at home. So if you're not afraid to trust me with your son, I can fill in for the nurse tonight. Oh, that's great. That's what we'll do. Maria's on her way over to give the shot. You'll administer your first injection under her supervision. If she says it's right, and you can be trusted with this serious business. Then you'll give Thomas a shot before you leave tonight. Dad, why before you leave? Won't he be living with us? Thomas asked. No, son, she doesn't want to. And I can't make her. And she's here temporarily until I find a good nurse for you. The girl noticed how the boy shrank, but she couldn't stay overnight in a strange house and with strangers. Her father would consider it an inconsiderate act. The atmosphere while Nancy was showing off her capabilities, nursing was tense. Maria cast frowning glances from the sidelines, defiantly at the fact that a replacement was being sought. Liam carefully watched the manipulations and Nancy their hands. He was not at all interested in Maria's displeasure. All that mattered to him was that his son receive everything the doctor had prescribed. Therefore, making sure that Nancy was doing everything right pleased him. So Maria, do you think it's safe to trust this girl? Well, I don't know, Liam. I wouldn't take any chances if I were you, the nurse said with a smirk. She did the right thing, the man clarified. Well, sort of. If you had sent cars for me, I could have come to the subject a second time. I don't see the need. I'm looking for a nurse with a medical degree. She'll administer both injections, and you'll finally be free. Maria didn't share his enthusiasm. More than that, and felt more resentful than ever, as if she had been waved into something unpleasant. Nancy looked at her and had to admit that the girl's pretty little stature and black hair and cotton, blue eyes under a fan of lashes, made her very touching to look at. She was a little older than Nancy. The robe she wore tightly, all the curves, her palms of her figure. The newcomer Maria felt threatened by her far-reaching plans. Lion was clearly not for her, but Demotchka treated her well. She literally accustomed him, and he appreciated this attitude. Of course, Nancy had no idea about Maria's plans, but the fact that she started to get nervous, not hiding her emotions, worked against her. Maybe she should have reassured the nurse that Nancy didn't have a view on Thomas, but for some reason she didn't feel like it. Nor did she deserve respect for such behavior. Liam was rarely violent, but when he was, it was hard to get him off course. The same character trait had been passed on to his son. So he asked Maria to come again until he found a new nurse. All the following days, Maria was in anticipation of a call from Liam, hypnotizing the phone in hopes that he would call, apologize, and send a car for him. Sometimes there was a great desire to go to her father and tell him how she felt about Thomas and how she really felt about him, that she had fallen in love with him a long time ago, but the fear that she might lose everything and a little bit of pride left. So after saying goodbye, she proudly left the room, cursing this Nancy redneck who had messed up all her plans. For some reason, she thought it would be easy to hide Junior. Maria knew her worth. Not everyone had access to such a beautiful body. And here, you have to give her credit, beauty was picky, although she saw the reaction of men to her person. Almost every one of them considered for happiness to get permission, make a gift, or take her to a restaurant. Maria never stooped to going door to door to get a shot in the ass. But when she learned that Thomas's father was young, rich, and a widower, she immediately agreed, fearing that someone would be more legitimate and snatch such a tidbit. For almost a year, she had been grooming Thomas, but he had not responded to her at all. Then about a month ago, he asked her to stay after her injection. At first, they chatted for a long time, laughing. She sat down on his couch, took his hand, and he reached out to kiss her. A real, grown-up kiss. At first a little shy, but then he dared, pressed against her, literally deprived her of air. She wished this kiss would never end. She wished she could stay with him here, and now let him have more. But Thomas stopped and apologized at length for his intemperance. Maria, as a medical worker, understood a guy 20 and no outlet for young energy, so she calmed him down. Well, something not apologizing. Oh, first of all, I understand. And second of all, I liked it. You're a great kisser. It's great. It took a lot of work for her to play it cool. But she still had the idea to finish what she'd started. Seeing Nancy, a young and pretty girl, made her nervous, but then she thought the girl was no competition for her. It was just that jealousy of Thomas had finally clouded her mind and turned her into a wallflower. This is nonsense. She said to herself, where I am beautiful, sexy, experienced, and where this redneck, though cute, but still quite snotty. After calming down a bit, finished everything Liam had asked her to do. Nina and Liam left for work, leaving Nancy with her ward. Let me show you around the house so you know what's where. They held hands and went down to the first floor. I have lived in this house since I was 5 years old, Thomas said. When I walked in and saw this huge house, my parents told me later that I looked up, put my hands to my cheeks and said, oh, yay, what a palace. This is where the Sultan lives. I was so amazed at the size of it. But to be honest, I too, when I entered, was stunned by such beauty, admitted Nancy. A chandelier that looks like a frozen waterfall, and how it shimmers with multicolored lights. This chandelier was ordered from Italy by my parents, and all the pendants are white. And since each of them has many facets, they get different colors from the lamps. Oh wow, wow. I've never been in a house like this in my life. I've only seen it on TV and in movies. Well, if I tell anyone, they won't believe it. Nancy exclaimed enthusiastically, not letting go of Thomas's hand for a second. If you want to read in the library, there's Dad's office right next door, and then the rooms of the employees who live with us. Thomas led her around the house. He had a great sense of direction, remembered everything. He introduced her to the house helpers. It was obvious they all treated him well. If you'd agreed to live with us, your room would have been next to mine. But Dad told me not to push you. She followed the turn of Thomas's head. And see, there's a portrait of a woman hanging there. Yeah, it's huge, and the woman is gorgeous. That's my mom. Laura is a beautiful truth. Very kind eyes and a rock mole like yours. She's Italian. Yeah, she and my dad met when he was vacationing there. My Italian grandparents didn't want to let her go to the USA, but she fell in love with my dad and followed him. It's impossible not to fall in love with him, Nancy thought. And when she died, they wanted to take the ashes to Italy, but Daddy wouldn't give them back. So they asked for at least part of it to be buried in her native land. Listening to Thomas's story, the girl looked all the time at the portrait, but when she heard the young man's voice trembling, she turned and saw tears in her eyes. Thomas, you don't have to tell me anymore. I understand how hard it is for you, how bad it is to be without your mom, but you still love her, and she feels it. Daria didn't know how to distract her boyfriend from his heavy thoughts. Listen, let's go for a walk. Why don't you tell me about yourself? Thomas smiled. Yes, I have a short biography so far. So what? I'm still interested. Walking around the grounds of the house, the girl said that she came from a small town to enroll in law school. So you want to be a lawyer? Why are you so surprised? No, we're just coworkers. I finished my first year, passed all my exams with flying colors, and then I couldn't go on. Really? Alex was surprised. Let's prepare a little bit at a time. I for admission, and you to continue studying. They took a long walk, rode on the swings, laughed, talked a lot, until they were called for lunch. After lunch, Thomas asked her to read. Get some adventure books from the library. I don't feel like reading any serious books right now. The day flew by quickly, at 7 p.m. sharp, giving him a shot. Nancy began to say goodbye. I'm going. Thomas, it's getting late. I'll see you again tomorrow morning. Thank you, Nancy. I had fun with you, and so did I. As she was leaving the gate, she saw Liam's car. "Leaving already?" The man asked. "Yes, it's time. See you tomorrow." She couldn't look him in the eye. She stood in front of him like a schoolgirl in front of a strict headmaster. It was a new feeling, completely unknown to her, and it frightened her. It shouldn't be like this. It's wrong. Not normal. He's much older, even though he looks great. I get lost around him. It's a horror. It's a good thing no one in this house can read minds. There's something unimaginable going on in my head. When I arrived at their house, I tried to be a little late so that Thomas's father could leave for work. It was amazing. He didn't seem to be doing anything, but it turned me upside down. Also, those random touches. He must like to watch my embarrassment. A pat on the shoulder, a handshake. And I don't know what the right thing to do is. To a small town girl, he was a prince from a fairy tale, a man strong enough to solve any problem. I guess that's the kind of man everybody likes. Thought the girl drove away from home from Omsk every time. The week during which Nancy had been visiting Thomas was coming to an end. They had become friends. Both liked being around each other. Common interests, common goals brought them together and made their time together worthwhile. Liam came home from work on Friday and said that Nancy could be off work from Monday. He had found a good caregiver. "Thank you so much for helping us out." And handing her a puffy envelope, he continued, "And this is for you for a job well done." The girl's face changed, her gaze faded, and not paying attention to the envelope, she said regretfully, "So you don't need my services anymore." Liam looked at her and shook his head. "Well, thank you. I'm glad I met you." Bye, Thomas, and without taking the money ran down the stairs and downstairs. "Nancy, did you forget the money?" "I don't need it." Liam ran after her, taking her by the hand, and quietly said every job has to be paid for. "You've done a wonderful job this week, and you deserve that money. Take it. And thank you very much." She looked with eyes full of tears at Liam, but he was calm, poised, focused. His gaze was direct and open. He looked unashamed, but not cocky. The man was used to being the master of the position, used to leading a firm of people, of emotions, used to separating the personal from the business. And Nancy's emotions took over, and she couldn't handle them. "I was very comfortable. Very nice people, and thanks for the money." "That's another thing," Liam said happily. "Say hello to Nina. And I have to come on Saturday and Sunday. Thomas needs his shots." "No, Nancy, these are the ones that have run out. And starting Monday, there's another one and another nurse." I realized she finally found the strength to get in the car. There were no more questions, so it was no longer appropriate to delay Liam. Waving goodbye to him, the girl turned away. Thomas was also upset. Turned back to the wall, the boy did not want to talk to his father. "Son, what's wrong?" Seeing no reaction, he asked Thomas, "I'm waiting for an answer." "Why did you fire her?" "I felt so good with her. I even felt like I could see. She's wonderful, smart. I think she's beautiful and kind. Did you know he graduated high school with a gold medal? We had so much fun together." "Well, first of all, she didn't want to work here, and secondly, not to work, but to live. What do you care if they bring her to us? What difference does it make? She gives better shots than Maria. I don't even notice and ask her if she's finished. Call her and tell her to come over. I don't need anyone else on Monday." Liam went down to the kitchen to talk to those who had the whole day in front of them. There was Thomas and Nancy. "Good girl," the housekeeper said. "Thomas is even eating better." "What do you mean he's eating better?" "I'm missing something." "Can you elaborate?" Because if he refused, he'd push the plate away too, adding that she was very hungry but wouldn't touch anything without him. And today he asked for more. They've become very friendly. She tells him things all the time. She won't leave his side. To be honest, Liam hasn't seen him this cheerful in a long time. I apologize if I'm prying, but as a mother of 3 children, your son needs emotional support. More of these nurses sitting with him and him cramping, and also brought him back to life. He started to believe that everything was going to be okay. Excuse me." "Thank you," replied Liam and walked into his office. He was about to call Nina to bring Nancy back, but there was a knock. Liam already knew who it was. Only she could knock so melodiously without waiting for an answer. The door opened. The man was not mistaken. She came up behind him, circled his neck and snack, and just a little in his ear asked, "How are you?" The man stood up abruptly. "I asked you never to do that." And walked out of the office. Meanwhile, Nina was figuring out the reason for her niece's bad mood at what had happened. "Liam fired me, said he no longer needed my services." "That's right, you only agreed to work for a week, and you didn't want to live there." "Did he find another nurse?" "Yeah, starting Monday, another live-in one." "So I don't understand, what do you want?" Nina smiled. "I want to work there." "What's all of a sudden?" Why the change? Nancy didn't know why she was drawn there. Or rather, she guessed. She should have at least admitted to herself that she liked Liam. Realizing it was wrong, she couldn't tell her aunt. She calmed down a little. After the relative returned, Liam realized that it was too late to call Nina and postponed the conversation for tomorrow. And Nancy took some newspapers and started to look for a job. Getting up early in the morning, she went to the addresses. A small law office required a courier. But she noticed a pregnant girl in the secretary's place. And she smiled and said, "I'll be out in a month. Do you want to take the job? They won't hire me." "I don't know anything." "You're not stupid. We'll teach you to answer the documents and come back, and I'll tell you all the wisdom of our work. And if the director doesn't hire me, so I'll ask, he has someone in mind. If he doesn't, he will." Nancy hadn't been so lucky in a long time. She took a little longer than she should have to pull the paperwork. She just didn't know Washington very well yet. But that was fixable. She got home late that day. She was in a great mood. And from the doorstep, she shouted Aunt Nina, "I got a job, and I'll probably be working as a secretary in a month. So I won't be hanging on your neck." "What's that?" "You're worried about the mice. The money you earned from Liam?" "I put it in your account. You'll need it to buy new clothes, a cell phone." "I'm worried about you. You don't know Washington. That's why the phone is our first purchase." And Liam called. My heart sank into my heels. "Why?" Nancy asked quietly, "Inviting you back to Thomas. To tell you that everyone there is crazy about you, especially Junior." "Why don't you say something? Can you hear me?" "Of course I can hear you," Nancy said, smiling. "What do you say?" "I say no, I'm not going back to them." "Nancy, I don't understand you. Yesterday you were crying about going back to them. Today they're asking you to go back and you're a damn it no. What happened?" She went over to her aunt and hugged her. "I can't go back there. It's not right. I really like Liam. I realize he doesn't want me, but I'm afraid to hear it from him. He's a grown-up, wealthy man, and he should have a beautiful, elegant woman by his side, not some shepherdess like me. Of course, I need a simpler man. A family, children, like my parents. Liam drives a lot of women crazy. It's hard to pass by such a handsome man and not notice him. But his wife's own sister, Charlotte, has been pining for him ever since Laura and Liam met. This spoiled girl could tell her older sister anything, up to and including, 'You're not right for him, and I could brighten his life.' She was disgusting at the wedding. She came to the funeral with her parents, but refused to leave, saying that she would stay for a month to support Liam. Liam has been living with her for 2 years now and has been getting on his nerves, wanting to get him into bed. But he's a tough nut to crack and waits for her to get tired of it. That's why it's right that you decided not to go to them. She's so confrontational, she might even hit you." "Oh, is that it?" I didn't know. The girl was surprised. At that time, the phone rang. "It's Liam." "Yes, darling, I'm listening." "But what do you say, Nina?" "I can't tell Liam anything. She's got a job, and she doesn't want to go anywhere." "Oh, and you can talk to him yourself." "Hello, Liam. How's Thomas?" "He's waiting for you. Maybe you can change your mind." "No, Liam. I'm going to college, and I'm going to work as a secretary in a law firm. I'll learn a lot for my future profession." "I see. Maybe we could arrange for you to visit him on Saturday. I'll drive you to work on Monday morning." She wanted so much to see this man again, to be near him, to talk to him. After some thought, she agreed. "All right. For Thomas's sake, I'll visit him on weekends. Thank you very much. I'll pay you well for it." Don't give me any money. I'll come to your place like a vacation home. What money? It's out of the question, the man said. You'll have the car on Saturday at 11 o'clock. Okay. Hello, Thomas. Thank you, Nancy. She kissed Nina. I'm so lucky. He asked me out. Silly, you be careful, and remember he invited you to see his son. Well, Auntie, you've ruined everything. Opening the door, Liam stood with a positive smile and watched Daria. He liked this girl, modest, open, all natural, without pretense and desire to please. Very cute. Such girls, as a rule, make men feel protective. And it was nice. I'm glad to see you back with us, he said. Nancy stood Thomas at the edge of the steps. Careful, you're on the very edge, and she rushed to the young man. He put his arms around her, and Nancy shared the color. She felt good and easy with this guy. It was as if they had known each other for years. Come on, don't have much to tell you. And he pulled the girl towards his room. Liam sighed, thank goodness she agreed. Thomas had really changed. He wore a nice shirt, and most importantly, he was in a good mood. Saturday night was drawing to a close when Nancy, after wishing Thomas a good night, left his room. Nancy, come downstairs. That was Liam. Let's sit by the fire. He set 2 cups on the table, scented tea. Pulled out a very large box of chocolates and fancy cookies. A treat, tea from India and candy from Switzerland. And the cookies are from our wall. I think it tasted the best. The tea was really flavorful. The candy was delicious on the cookies were beyond delicious. They drank tea like old acquaintances. And Nancy looked at him with such sincerity. Every word he said. The quiet music made them talk. Will you admit me to your company? Charlotte asked quietly. Finally, Alex was able to examine her, a searing brunette with thin lips behind a strange little nose and eyes very prickly, looking with suspicion. Everyone fell silent, interrupting your conversations. Nancy remained silent, believing she had no right to interfere. She is a guest. Let the host speak. No, not interfered with. Sit down and drink your tea and I'll go to bed. So it's still a hindrance to be with evil, shouted the woman. As the door to Liam's bedroom closed, Charlotte's barbed gaze shifted to Nancy. Don't you dare flirt with him, she whispered in broken Russian. He's mine. If you want to stay in this house, you know your place. You're a nurse, remember, even though you're drinking. The owners. Very emotionally, she spoke in Italian, quickly waving her hands, replacing Russian words with Italian and vice versa. You want me not to come to this house? That would be the perfect solution. Okay, I'll tell Liam tomorrow that I can't go to his house because you don't want me to. And she turned to leave. But Charlotte, realizing the full horror of what she had said, tugged Nancy sharply by the sleeve. Don't you dare tell him otherwise. Don't shout at her. Suddenly, they heard Thomas's voice. Out of the bedroom jumped Liam. What's wrong? Thomas, why aren't you asleep? Dad, she's yelling at her. Okay, I get it. Go to bed. You too, Nancy, go to your room. And you, come here. And grabbing her elbow, Charlotte dragged her into the study. Right in front of her, he called his Italian mother-in-law and father-in-law. Good evening. Don't you miss your daughter? I understand your sarcasm, replied the father-in-law, so we're waiting for her whether we miss her or not. I hear you. I'll get her a ticket tomorrow and call you back. And they said goodbye. I think he turned to Charlotte outside the living room. In this house, a month stretches into a year or more. Absolutely everything about her was unnerving and stressful. Ever since Charlotte had come into their lives, no matter what he did, no matter what his head was occupied with, it kept coming back to the idea that it was time for her to go to Italy. I didn't mean to be rude to you. For the sake of memory about Laura, but you don't know the world, and so I say openly you don't interest me as a woman. And as a person you displease me. I don't want you in my house. I'm sorry, Liam, I love you too much, and I can't see any woman around you. Where do you see a woman? Is it a child? Is she 18? No, I'm not changing my mind. You're going home, and you can only come to see me with your parents. That's it. I'm going to bed. He couldn't bear to have her in his house. He just imagined her in his bed, and everything inside clenched into a lump, and started to nauseate. Two sisters from the same dad and mom, and so different it's Laura is the very modesty, gentleness, sincerity, and Charlotte, the jealous mean, horribly spoiled one. If you can hear me now. He turned to Laura. Forgive me and understand, she makes the servants groan. She makes me and my guests sick. I love you, the man said into the silence. In the morning, Liam booked a ticket to Italy, and the plane would leave at night. Pack the plane. I'll drive you tonight. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here. Okay, just not at my place. I'll take you to a hotel. Pay for the day. I'll take it from here. You're cruel, Liam. I'm your wife's own sister. That's right, just a sister. And you're acting like a wife. She called her parents, who supported Liam and told her to fly home. He calmed down when he saw the plane in the sky, sighed and crossed himself. And on Sunday, Liam hosted a lunch right outside. The main course was kebabs. Autumn had come into its own, so everyone was warmly dressed, and hot tea made everyone's mouths steam. The mood was wonderful. Thomas was especially happy, telling funny stories from his short student life. Apparently it's going to rain, said Liam. Looking at the frowning clouds, Ruth went and thought of the warm chair by the fireplace. You're leaving tomorrow? Thomas asked sadly. Yes, I'm working now. Next time I'll tell you how I'm doing. Waking up early, Monday, she didn't want to wake Thomas, but he was already standing outside his room to say goodbye to Alex. I'll be waiting for you, said the girl and rushed down the stairs. Winter crept up unnoticed. It snowed in late November and carved fluffy snowflakes, gently touching her face melted. Rode to metal so fast that even machinery couldn't cope with this beautiful natural phenomenon. Nancy had already been working as a secretary for a month. It had been very difficult at first. There were serious doubts flaring up inside to drop everything to hell and go back home. She was always welcome and loved there. She missed her home, her parents, and the traitorous tears that came to her eyes. Her nose began to sting and she was ready to give up. But her natural tenacity and hardness of character, which did not match her angelic appearance, did not give her that chance. And she stormed the computer, documents, learned to talk to people, and the matter moved from the dead point. Now she liked the whole team of the director of visitors, with whom she was at first afraid to enter into a polemic, but now dared to give even advice. There are conditions in our contract with you where the act of acceptance of services rendered should be formalized. Said Nancy, this is an important point, so it was included in the contract. We on our part have done everything, and you have not. Such a conversation was heard by the director of the firm, David. He was more than capable of keeping everything under control, in his fist. Nothing without his authorization was valid. That's probably why there was perfect order in Perm. Well done, Nancy. I guess there's a reason they give out gold medals in our schools. She's working, and she's 5 minutes late today. That's not nice. Where do you live? I'm staying with my aunt. And who's our aunt? Nena Ilyinokna Molotov. Not Nena, the modeling house. Yes, my wife adores her. When Michael was alive, we used to get together a lot. Once we were very much helped by our crazy daughter-in-law, who ran away before the wedding with some Turk. The payment had already been made. I didn't understand much about your outfits, but when I saw it, I was stunned. It was a work of art. And it cost money. And David rolled his eyes. We didn't know what to do with the dress, and we didn't want to put it on the line for that much money. But she offered to keep it. And a week later she called and returned the advance payment. We bought the dress. A month later she showed up. She apologized, swore to her son in eternal love, but he did not forgive her. That's the way it is. He kept looking at Nancy in amazement. A good friend of his had managed to meet a relative at Washington. A big hello to her from all the fists, and burst into pure laughter. December took the bull by the horns at once. The frost cracked and snow fell. Christmas trees were already visible in some windows. It smelled of tangerines. Christmas tree markets opened everywhere. Washington New Year's Eve was transformed and sparkled with colorful lights. Nancy was going to spend Christmas in Washington, and on New Year's vacation, she was going to go home to see her parents, her sister, and bring presents to everyone. They were standing with Nana near the Christmas tree, which they were dressing up with old toys. Nancy remembered them from when she was very young. Called, Liam invited us to visit on December 25 to celebrate Christmas with them, since there is a desire to go, unless I don't want to go with you alone. It's a family holiday. I'll be warmer with you. But I need to buy a new dress. We'll buy one if we have to. And she kissed her niece. In Italy at this time, the passions were running high. Charlotte was tapping her foot, demanding her parents send her to USA. Liam. Don't you see, he loves me. It's just an unusual situation. I'm his ex-wife's sister. That's why he hesitates, and I want to go to him. No, the father answered. Can't you see he doesn't care about you at all? He doesn't want you. How else can I tell you to leave this man alone? He's had almost 20 years to think about whether he wants you or not. Don't have any illusions, but get on with your life. I hate you, Charlotte whispered. I'm sure you do. You're crazy with idleness. You could work at your uncle's store. I don't want to work, and you should. If you had your own money, you could buy a ticket to your Liam, and he gave her a sly look. That's probably the only argument for going to work. I'm sorry she won't be spending Christmas in the USA. Charlotte decided to call Liam, but he was in too good a mood to listen to that voice. He turned off the phones and felt better. The bastard wouldn't even talk to her. She felt like she was about to be torn in half. I don't know what to do. And the woman cried out of helplessness. That's what I'm saying. When a man wants to be with a woman, there's not much to stop him. Practically nothing. So be smart. How do you know there's nothing to stop a man? I have experience, smiled my father. Giovanni, you talk too much today. The wife spoke up. Look at me and Mom. My 5th decade together, and I love her as I did 46 years ago. The daughter hugged her father and whispered in his ear, I love him very much too. My daughter will be happy without him, believe me. At the entrance to the law office de jure hung the colorful announcement, inviting employees to the New Year's corporate party. Everyone was in a great mood. Everyone was preparing for the holiday. And no one was preparing contracts. David did not spoil the festive mood. He decided that after the New Year vacation he would take his own. Everything was new to Nancy. A huge Christmas tree decorated the banquet hall. New Year's Eve bustle was felt in everything. On the appointed day and hour, beautiful women in New Year's dresses and men in elegant suits appeared in the office. Some of them were unrecognizable. The tables were bursting with expensive appetizers and elite alcohol. Fist always celebrated New Year's holidays with a bang. He was respected for his ability to make people happy and never refused. If he asked to stay late at work, his principle is that any labor should be paid. The workers liked him, and they never let him down. When Nancy entered the hall in a new blue dress, floor length, she was pushed into a room where Santa Claus was already there. You couldn't see his face at all. His eyes were hidden by a hat and the rest by a beard. I don't know what to say to fear, Nancy said. Nothing, just stand by and smile. The voice was young and pleasant. It sounded more like a new one, rather than an old man that everyone had gathered to greet. As she stepped onto the stage for the first time, she tried to look at Santa Claus and marveled at how calm, unperturbed he seemed. She didn't know how to do that yet. That was why her face and ears were treacherously burning. But she smiled just as Santa Claus had told her to. Nancy had never been so worried. And today she was shaking. Was it a joke? So many eyes were looking at her and discussing her outfit. She's a beautiful girl and her dress is amazing. Where does a company secretary get that kind of money? If she leaves, I'll be the first to take her place, muttered the lanky-colored blonde. It pays. Really was chic. It emphasized her beautiful figure, and the slit at the side gave the most curious to look at the slender legs. Nancy smiled like a fool, trying to close the slit on the dress, and did not even guess what portion of envy she faced, standing on the stage in this beautiful outfit. After congratulating her, Santa Claus asked her to dance, and to general applause, they twirled around the room. When the evening was in full swing, a tall young man approached her and in the voice of Santa Claus asked her to dance. Is that you? The girl laughed. What do you mean? Trying to play the former snow maiden, he asked. Well, that you are Santa Claus. I recognized your voice. There was no point in denying it. Daniel introduced himself. Nancy, can I call you Nancy? She didn't even have to act surprised, but rather covered her mouth with the palm of her hand. You're the second person who likes the name Nancy better than my full Nancy. And who's my competition? Why would you say you're my competition? Just a very nice man. Daniel's eyes radiated warmth, and the girl was glad that she wouldn't have to watch the fun with her colleagues from the sidelines. Daniel's eyes even glistened from the attention. She was having fun drinking champagne at 1:00 a.m. Aunt Nena called. Nancy, how can you come? Aren't you asleep? How can I sleep when you're not home, so come over. All right, come over. Are you guys leaving already? Daniel was surprised. Yes, it's time. I'm a little tired, to be honest. She saw the fist himself heading toward them. Do you know who it is? He asked Daniel. Yeah, we met. Then you don't. That's Nina Ilinikna's niece, not Zero's. From the modeling house. Right. You, I see you don't know who he is either. Fist turned to Nancy. He is. Yes, I know him, Daniel. But he's also my son, Daniel Dmitrievich Jr., as he said goodbye. Daniel managed to ask for the girl's phone number. He obviously liked her. I'll call you, he shouted. Driving away in the car was the same. Snow was falling outside the window. The wind gently played with the snowflakes, then tossing them up and twirling them in a dance, then letting them fall and covering the ground with a white blanket. Nancy lit the table lamp, went to the window, and leaning her forehead against the glass, watched how nature was preparing for the new year. I looked again at my dress and mentally thanked my aunt, who had made such a beauty in 5 days. There was no style, because the fabric itself was a decoration. It was also Nina's merit. She traveled all over Europe to buy an exclusive. The girl was getting ready to go to bed, and the smile never left her face. So I found the snow maiden, stood, twirled. That's the whole role. And Daniel, of course, is good with humor. I thought Nancy was already in bed. Memories of the girl were interrupted by the entrance of Nina. Her motherly look had a soothing effect on Nancy. How did you like the evening? Your first ball. It was great. The tree was huge. The table was so rich. And I'm in such a dress, you can imagine. Why not a dress to match this beauty? And Nancy's paying me. Let's just go with you. It'll bring us closer together. There's something big coming up for the next ball. And then you and I will go home together. I miss my brothers and sisters too. We should get together. And Christmas is a good occasion for that. Liam said, opening the door and inviting me in. The festive mood was felt as soon as they drove up to the house. Right in front of the house, a huge blue spruce was decorated from top to bottom with toys and colorful lights. On the other side of the house was a huge slide. Oh, this is really going to be fun, Alex said, laughing. Do you like it? Asked Liam. Although he knew the answer beforehand, it couldn't help but like it. The people had already gathered in the living room. Each group was divided by interests, but Nina was approached. Almost all of them congratulated and, hugging, wished her the best for the coming year. Somehow not. Thomas's friends. The girl said sadly, you know how it is. You are healthy, young, full of hopes and plans. You are admired by many friends around you. You are in demand, popular. And then all of a sudden, nobody wants you. And not even because you suddenly went blind. It's just that they found new and healthy friends. Thomas is one. But unfortunately, albeit at such a cost, he learned who is a friend and who is nothing. Holding her niece's hand, Nina explained, I'm sure Thomas will find his strength and return to normal life. It's hard, of course, but he has no other way. That's right, girl. There he is standing on the stairs. Go congratulate him and help him down. Liam came out of the office and started to invite everyone to the table. Nancy kept looking at him, and he kept looking at his watch. Liam's waiting for someone. Everyone's looking at the clock. Nina noticed. I thought so too. But the guests began to make toasts. Everyone thanked the past year for something. But in one thing they all agreed, that the year was letting go with gratitude for all the good things. Toward midnight, the doorbell rang and Liam jumped up and went to open it. He walked in under the arm of a beautiful, slender woman, taking off her fur coat as he went. A blonde with huge brown eyes in a beautiful dress, emphasizing all her charms, went straight to the table and took a seat next to Liam. "Meet Kate." She smiled with pleasure and nodded to everyone, showing that she was pleased with such attention. And if they were Liam's friends, she wouldn't mind them being her friends as well. Beautiful, looking at the new guest, Nina said, "I don't like her, to be honest. And if I don't like someone, then maybe we can go home," he said sadly. Nina didn't stay silent. "I remember you said that you're not his match, that he needs a woman of his circle, beautiful, elegant. I think he heard you. You're not his, and he's not yours. Don't disappoint me, Nancy, and don't ruin people's New Year's Eve mood. You're not a child anymore. I'm sorry, I realize I'm a fool." Daria lowered her eyes. "I agree with you there." 5 minutes before New Year's Eve, Liam asked everyone to take a glass of champagne and go outside. As soon as the chimes began to count down the last minutes of the passing year, the fireworks started. The clinking of crystal glasses was heard. Everyone was hugging and glancing at Liam. Daria saw him kissing. She turned away. Thomas was standing next to her, wishing her a Merry Christmas and wishing her happiness. Then the grown-up uncles and aunts were riding down the slide and cheering like children. The same. And Thomas also rode together when everyone went back into the house and started dancing. Daria asked her aunt to go home. "Let's go, it's the 4th hour of the night." "I'm tired." "Don't say anything." "Liam, I'll just say goodbye to Thomas." "Can't you stay a little longer?" asked the young man. "No. Thomas, Auntie is tired and wants to go home. That's why we're going. Tell your dad. Thank you for such a lovely evening." And kissing him on the cheek, she ran to the car. Nina looked at her niece as she arrived. "What do you say?" "Yeah, what can I say? I'm not a handsome couple, as much as I'd like to be. She suits him better than me. I wonder how old she is." "She's 32. That's the right age. She also owns a beauty parlor." "I can see that. Fabulously well-groomed, not like me." "Silly," smiled Nina. "You're so pretty, no grooming needed, believe me. But she's right for him, and you need to get over it." "How do you know all about her?" Nancy suddenly looked at her aunt. "Some of the guests know her. And stop worrying about losing a man who never belonged to you. You have my word we're talking about Liam. I can handle one last time. I like you better, and you remind me of your father." They smiled at each other, and Nancy leaned against her aunt's shoulder and fell asleep. By the time Nancy got to her pillow, it was 5 o'clock. But sleep was snatched away because it hurt, really hurt, and there was no way she could get rid of it. Even with her fertile imagination, she pictured Liam with Kate. She was ashamed of these explicit thoughts. But she couldn't get rid of the image of Liam kissing that beautiful woman. Auntie was right. I am not his, and he is not mine. We're close, but we're not together. We never have been, and we definitely won't be anymore. This endless conversation Nancy was having with herself, asking and reasoning and answering her own questions. She had no idea it would hurt and offend her so much. Though Liam had never given her any reason to think there might be anything between them. But didn't he notice my glances and sighs? He's an experienced man who knows how a woman behaves when a man likes her. Nancy asked someone in her mind. But she had to answer her own questions. How a woman behaves, of course he knows. But a 17-year-old girl probably doesn't. She lay still for so long until her eyelids grew heavy, and she fell into a New Year's Eve dream in which she was riding with Liam on a slide and dancing a slow dance to magical music. His hot palms were on her waist, and she was melting in his arms. The girl woke up by lunchtime to the delicious smell, fresh roasted coffee and vanilla. The next day they left for home, taking groceries and gifts with them. Their hometown greeted them with frost from the roads. There was still a fence stretching to the left, only now it was not green, but brown. But the inscriptions on it were still the same decent caricatures. Then teenage mate, hearts, drawings. It was all a sign of her former life, which had become quite alien to her. The car drove along the fence. Nancy no longer looked at it. It was as if there was no life here. Nothing had changed in the time she'd been gone. only Daddy had gotten older. When she saw him in front of the car, she jumped out and threw herself on her father's neck. Her cozy little world had now narrowed for her to the size of her parents' house and their embrace. The house was warm and cozy. Music from the 70s played quietly. The Christmas tree stood in its original place. The little sisters were quiet, afraid to approach their big sister. Everything changed when Nancy started giving presents. They took out the groceries. The parents sat on the couch watching the gift-giving commotion. Mom wiped away front tears, and Dad squinted slyly and called for order. By lunchtime, all the relatives had pulled up, and Nancy immediately felt at home and realized how much she missed everyone. Nancy's last night at her parents' house was unsettling. She realized that she would not be able to see the people dear to her heart for a long time to come. They had lived together for 17 years, shared their joys and sorrows, and now she had to get used to living apart from them. Aunt Nina, of course, questioned her loneliness and was that little bridge connecting her to her ancestral home. If you don't get into Washington this year, you have nothing more to do. Come home and go to technical school and help your mother. I'll get in. Dad, I'll definitely get in. Don't even doubt it. It's hard to give up everything you've ever dreamed of. I want to get everything I'm entitled to. It's not for nothing that I got this gold medal. Don't worry, step in. Nina stood up for her niece. Such a daughter should be proud. Not a day of idleness treated money, earned money helped me. You brought her up well, and everything will work out for her. Father hugged his sister. Thank you for your daughter. I'm calm that she's not hanging around in apartments, but lives in good conditions. She's a homegrown child. And everyone saw the tears in this seemingly stern man. Nancy threw herself into her father's neck and looked up at him with eyes full of happiness and said, I love you for me. Don't worry with me, Aunt Nana. The cars got farther and farther away from the house, and the parents stood and watched. Nancy only turned away when they were out of sight. It's so good to have you. You, she said, hugging Nana. And I have you, she replied. No sooner had they entered the apartment than the phone rang. Doria, where did you disappear to? Thomas asked cheerfully. Immediately the picture of Liam and Kate came to mind. I haven't disappeared. Why don't you come over? Look, Thomas, I have a personal life after all. I'm sorry I ruined your mood. I realize you don't have to. No, I don't. Nancy answered and cried. It's no good, darling. What does this guy have to do with it? He didn't even see that kiss or Kate at all. You need to learn to separate the personal from your work and your friendships. Thomas is a good guy. He's got a crush on you. You said he doesn't have any friends. No, definitely not. You disappoint me, said a disgruntled Nina. I'll call him tomorrow and apologize. But to avoid doing that with your head, you have to think about calling Thomas. She was, of course, ashamed. It really wasn't his fault that his father had chosen Kate over her, but it was on him that she took out her resentment and even her anger. Though the latter was hard for her to admit, Daria still knew the subject too poorly to speculate on whether or not he would call again. Of course he was upset, hurt, but he was so proper, reserved, calm. He had a way of handling his emotions that she should have learned from him. She called him a week later, but he didn't answer. She kept calling every day, but the result was the same. Then she came, and now she was standing in front of the gates of the mansion, and she couldn't get up to press the bell. Why did she come then? Asked the inner voice, and she pressed so that she was ready to see anyone but Kate. Good afternoon. Afternoon. Kate was familiar with this girl's face, but where she had seen her she couldn't remember. Do we know each other? She asked. My aunt and I were at Liam's for Christmas. I remember. What do you want? I'd like to see Thomas, and I worked for him as a nurse for a while, and we became friends. The woman's crooked smile threw Nancy off balance. The girl felt humiliated, but she didn't want to be humiliated at all. Nothing reflected on her face and said, sorry, I must have come for nothing. Hello, Thomas. He's not here anymore, Kate said. Liam had left with him for surgery, and she slammed the door shut. 2 years had passed. She was in her second year of law school. The part-time student didn't want to quit her job. She was used to her money and wanted to manage it herself. She left secretarial work a long time ago and worked as a paralegal. She liked that job. New people, new situations, and therefore new knowledge. She did the right thing by choosing to study part-time. For 2 years they dated Daniel, but she never lost touch with Thomas. She knew that the operation had been successful, but his eyesight had not yet fully returned. He wore glasses that were very stitched up. Thomas had matured, gotten better, and looked much more confident than before. He could well be called a handsome young man. Daniel wooed persistently. Calling Nancy gave in. After a year of dating, he proposed living together. "Move in with me. I have a nice one-bedroom apartment in the center. I don't get to see you that much. Is that a marriage proposal?" It seemed to her that after these words he fidgeted and answered quickly, "Not yet. We need to see if we're right for each other." "I don't think we are," said Nancy. "If a man wants to see you, he'll always find an opportunity. So it's purely an excuse." "Not true," Daniel defended himself zealously. "Don't yell without raising your voice at me. I think if you don't want to marry me, put a ring on this finger. It shows you're interested. So you don't really care that much. Oh, you're so smart. It's been hard on you, huh? I'm not holding anyone back. You're a big hit with the ladies, so it'll be easy to replace me." And she opened the front door and ran to her apartment. All evening, Alex replayed the conversation with the young man. "We're so different. I thought she was always dragging him to hang out. I'm not thrilled about it. He's a fish out of water at the most expensive club in Washington. It's torture for me. Too loud, too many people, too crowded, too drunk. Clubs will never be on my bucket list." She really didn't care for them. There were none in the village, and Washington had plenty to see without a club. As soon as they entered a club, the girls would immediately trickle in, fixing their hair and looking devotedly into his eyes. There was such energy coming from him, such a discharge of testosterone, that it acted like a magnet. His popularity, it alarmed and frightened her. She lay on her aunt's shoulder and shared her fears with her. "You're thinking right, girl, but you should consider one more important detail. If he does convince you, and you start living together in an unofficial marriage, you must be ready to accept all his shortcomings. Otherwise, you're in for a disappointment. You're a lawyer. You understand what some people call common law marriage. It's cohabitation. And he will forever consider himself free in this cohabitation. And you won't have any rights. I can't forbid you, but I can warn you. It's up to you, my dear. But I wouldn't be in a hurry. Remember my story and let it be a good lesson to you. I understand, Auntie, you're right. Do you love him? I like him, but he's a native Muscovite, and I'm still a girl from the country. That's what keeps us apart." Daria really underestimated herself. She had long ago acquired a gloss. She dressed well, studied well, was successful. Another thing was that it was still a kind, naive girl, believing in goodness and good people. Liam's passions were also boiling. After that New Year's Eve meeting where he introduced Kate to his friends, she started living in his house. Her relationship with the single girl who worked as Liam's cook didn't work out right away. She demanded some special food to keep herself in shape. Alone, she cooked excellently. She used to be a chef at a Washington restaurant. She was out of work because of a conflict with the owner. Then she came to Liam's house with a recommendation from his best friend, who had moved to Chicago. Over the years, she became a member of the family, loved Thomas, treated Liam's first wife well. It was generally loved by everyone. When he brought her to introduce her to his parents, they accepted her. "Get married right away, son. A beautiful woman," the father said then. The mother looked into her eyes until the girl was embarrassed. "You will see nothing but love for your son in my eyes," she said then. "That's good. If you love our son, you are always welcome in our house, and I shall be glad to have a daughter in your person." And so when Liam brought Kate to meet his parents, they were uninspired about the future kinship. Sitting at the table, Liam said that she was leaving soon with Thomas for an operation from the ophthalmology department of the clinic, while Maria was showing Kate around the house. Anthony's father called his son to the balcony to talk. "I don't like her. She's a son. I'm sincere. Is it artificial or something?" "Yeah, she's just worried. Dad wants you to like her. That's why it's so unnatural." I never told you about my method. He saw his son's eyebrows go up. What kind of beast is that? Give her carte blanche. Warn everyone before you leave that she's the future mistress of your house. To honor her every request. That's it. And what is the essence of the method? When a man is confident in his position and gets a lot of power, he allows himself a lot. And it's how much you learn when you get back that you are so surprised. This method has helped 2 friends of mine. Got rid of the same bitches. God forbid. And who's that? Well, you know, our neighbor. And the other one's his friend. Learned a lot about their future wives. Do as I ask you. Liam reluctantly nodded, promised to think about it. Of course, Kate was capricious, demanded a lot of attention, but that was normal. A woman in the house is not a piece of furniture, a living person. But after thinking about it, he did as his father asked, gathering all his employees. Before he left, he said, "We're going with Thomas to Germany. I'll be gone for a month or more. Kate will be left in charge of the landlady as my future wife." Everyone noticed how the women's shoulders squared and their eyes rolled. To obey her and fulfill all her requests. Understandably, no one said anything back. And as soon as the door slammed behind the master, everyone went to work. It was quiet for 3 days, and then the fighting with the loner began. I can't eat what you cook. How many times have I asked for less butter? I didn't put any this time. She made excuses. Talk to me again and you'll be out of here cooking for the workers in the cafeteria. You tell me what to cook. I'll try to make it for you. She'll try. For the kind of money you make, you should cook like God. No one ever complained. Through tears, the loner spoke. Then there was a little lull. What are you doing driving rags across the parquet? You idiot, you're ruining it. No, it's a special cloth with a fine issue. And I have a special compound for cleaning parquet. It's not the first year I've worked here, so I know. Everyone knew that it was useless to open your mouth to object to the future mistress. She didn't like that and tried to be obeyed without question. I've let you all go, Liam. Oh, I've let you all go by sacking you. The month turned out to be a year when Liam arrived. He had a letter of resignation on his desk in his office. "One, I won't be working for you anymore, Liam." "Why? What happened?" "I found another place that will pay me more." "That's good. How much were you promised?" "The new place will pay me more." "No, I've made up my mind." When Liam didn't see his wife's portrait, he almost got tetanus. That's how she screamed. "How? Where are you what, Liam?" "I mean the portrait." So yesterday, Kate ordered it taken down and taken to the basement. "Why?" "How do we know?" "You told me to follow her orders." "Maybe I shouldn't have turned off the video cameras." "I did," said the gardener. "As you were able. I was helping the guys when they were setting it up. I didn't turn it on right away, but after Kate hit the housekeeper Katya." He put the portrait back up and apologized to his wife. Then he turned on the horror movie. That's what Nikolay the gardener called it. He watched and could not believe his eyes. No, it can't be. That's not his Kate. What is she doing? What's wrong with the portrait of his wife? When she came back from work and saw Liam, who she was expecting only in 3 days, she was frightened for some reason. "Caustic, you're home so early." Everything went fine. From the side, she saw that the portrait of his dead wife was hanging in the same place again. "Good for you for hanging it up. Your employees do whatever they want. I want to show you an interesting movie." "Kostya, what kind of movie?" "Something interesting. But I don't know. First watch it and call me Kitty. I already asked you to do that." After watching it, she got up quietly. "I should probably go pack my things." Good decision. When she left, Liam didn't see her. She called him a few more times, but he didn't pick up, and then he blacklisted her. That was how the method worked. He only now realized how different he and she were. Like day and night, like ice and fire. He had no one after Laureate for too long. And now Kate. A young, beautiful woman, but nothing in common with his wife. It seemed to him that Kate would bring him back to life, bring him back to remember how beautiful it is to belong to a loving woman who, with one look, makes you forget everything and be happy. But it hadn't happened. He wanted nothing now. There was shame in front of his wife and son for letting a horrible man into his heart. Nina met Liam at the mall. "Hello, good to see you." The woman smiled reciprocally. "In a hurry, maybe for a cup of coffee? It's been a while." "Come on," Liam started talking out of the blue. It was only at first glance that everything seemed so easy for him. 6 months of his life had gone into another, and it was heartbreaking. I mean, we broke up with Kate. Nina almost choked on her hot coffee. Liam was silent, but she did not rush him and waited patiently for the revelation. "Liam, I can see in your eyes that you are eternally lonely. I know how that feels. If you want to talk, I'll listen, but don't try to look old. No one wants that. It's stupid, isn't it? The hell with it, I'll tell you. Wouldn't it make you feel better?" After listening to Liam's story, Nina marveled at the method. Where did it come from, such a method? "It's my grandfather Ivan Ivanovich's method. It's how they tested my mother, and she passed with flying colors. And I did the same thing on my father's advice, but bummer. Kate didn't pass the power test. How'd she take it? I don't know. It doesn't matter anymore. I hope it's still a happy one. Liam, I wish you from the bottom of my heart to find your soulmate." "Sincerely," said Nina. "I hope you will. Life is too short to waste it on those who only want money." Then they ordered another cup, and when they looked at the clock, they both jumped up and scattered after saying goodbye, looking out the car window at the evening city. She could hardly believe that such a thing could have happened to Liam, always circumspect and even distrustful. He had fallen in love like a boy. From all she had heard, Nina drew one, in her opinion, correct conclusion. Nancy must not know about it. Let her live her life. She's ready to dissolve into Liam. It wouldn't do any good. Daniel didn't ask Daria to live together anymore, but he wasn't going to back down either. He decided to change his tactics. Indeed, he was paying too little attention to her. His friends were taking up all his free time. Nancy didn't mind, but she didn't trust him much either. She didn't know what a close relationship with a man was at all. No one's touched her, unless, of course, you counted Daniel. All her sexual experience had been reduced to a few kisses with him at the entrance. She didn't want to go any further than that, which made the young man very angry. Now he met her after work with flowers, and they went out for dinner or a walk. She was surprised at this change in her relationship with Daniel. "What's the matter with you? You become so alertly tender and affectionate. Does it scare you?" "It's more of a surprise, but I like it." He never came without a present. They were heartwarming trinkets, like a stuffed toy, a fortune cookie, or a big heart-shaped lollipop. I know she sits at the table a lot, so I made her a hammock under the table for her feet. And one day I brought her a card with 3 numbers 5520 written on it in Chinese. "You know Chinese?" Daria asked with interest. "No, but I know that on the internet, the Chinese use these numbers to indicate this phrase." 520, repeated the girl as if she was tasting it. "You can't guess?" "No, unfortunately. If you put a dot after the number 5 and connect the 2 and 0, you get May 20, the day which is celebrated as the Day of Love in China. So those 3 numbers mean, and I love you. Should I take that as your confession?" "Yes, that's exactly what you should take it as," and pulling her to him, he kissed her. "Thank you for tonight. You surprise me every time. More and more. That's good. The guy's interested. Let's just say I like it." Already lying in bed, she thought that she had not answered anything to Daniel's confession. And if he had asked, what would she have done? Again, talking to herself, Nancy thought, "That's the kind of Daniel you could fall in love with. Yes, I'd say I love him too." She laughed and pouted. She didn't yet know this feeling of a beating heart and blushing cheeks, so she defined it as love. 3rd year, Nancy graduated with honors. She was the best. Thomas called and praised her for moving up to 4th year. "How are you doing?" "I'm doing okay. I can see a lot better. I'm not a great student, but you passed the session with no C's." "Well done, congratulations." She hadn't been to Thomas's for a long time, and he hadn't invited her or called her since then, for fear of getting under the hot hand and getting a portion of not very nice words. But he missed her very much, because he had learned a lot from the internet about where and who she worked. He would have liked to go out with her, invite her to the theater, but he couldn't. He knew she had a friend with whom she had been with for 3 years and was ready to hear the news about her wedding. Thomas knew that he would be very upset by the news, but as a man he would congratulate her. For himself, he decided that he would not go to the wedding. He would not be able to watch Nancy calmly with another man beside her. At the moment of such memories, he wanted to run away from his room, from this house, where everything reminded him of her. To his father, he could not say anything because he saw how he was going through his failed love. Maybe my father and I are one love, so we will never be happy with other women, Thomas thought sadly. That evening they took another long walk, talked about many things, and ate together all the Oriental sweets Daniel had given Daria. As they were saying goodbye at the entrance, a friend said, "Nancy, well, I guess it's time." She looked at him suspiciously and suddenly realized that she didn't know what he was talking about. "You're finally ripe for cohabitation." With those words, all the good things that had happened that evening vanished like smoke. "Daniel, I told you before, I don't want to cohabitate. I want a family, I want children, I want to be happy with you. The way people use to get married without cohabitation. I want to tell you again, if you expect me to agree to such a proposal, don't waste your time, I won't agree. I thought you loved me because it's impossible to spend so much time with someone you love. I do. Don't doubt it. I've told you before that you're a very smart girl." Turning around, he pulled her closer to him. "And you're not the only one." She raised her head to look him in the eye. "You think I could offer that to a woman I don't love? And when? And I think only the unloved. You could make such a humiliating proposal for a day. Let's take a break from each other, see how much we need each other's company. But I don't want a break from you." And he stood with his back to the front door so he wouldn't even leave. "I'm the one who should be offended that you so easily suggest not seeing each other. So you don't care about me, and you can do without me." And he pushed himself away from the door and walked away. "Daniel, wait," shouted Nancy. "I like you very much. I even love you. But don't offer me any more cohabitation. It sounds disgusting to me, cohabitation." She made a grimace and laughed. "Okay, you're on board with that." And he pulled out a ring box. "Marry me." Daniel, right off the bat. Right off the bat. Soon it'll be 3 years since we've been walking around Washington. I don't even know if there are any places we haven't been. She put her arms around him and held him tight. "So you love me?" "You bet I do. I love you very much. You're so special. Only an idiot wouldn't love you. And I don't consider myself an idiot. But I don't know your family. And this is from mine. It's important to me. I must seem old-fashioned. But no offense, I was raised that way. Half my family. You know, the main fist, David, the second fist, Daniel Dmitrievich, yours truly, and 2 more fists in the person of my mom, Miranda, and the younger fist of my brother James you'll find out next Sunday. All right. Aha. And next weekend we'll go to my parents' house. They're simple people, hardworking and honest, not afraid. But you're not going to leave me to them, Nancy said. They stood in the driveway for a long time. There was much to talk about. But Auntie called home. "Alex, I think the whole house knows that Daniel proposed to you or said goodbye. Either come upstairs, stop this outrage." He took her in his arms again and their lips met, and they forgot everything Nina had just told them. Only then did they disperse to think alone about the changes that awaited them in the future. But what a habit to solve serious questions near the entrance, the woman resented. Is it really pleasant to have the whole house turned into one big ear? Nancy was so happy that she hugged her aunt and whirled around. "Look how pretty it is." She was showing a pretty ring on her fingers. "He loves me, you know?" "Of course I understand," patted my niece on the back. "I'm happy for you if you'll be happy with him." "Yes, of course I will. Do you think it'll be any different? Don't scare me. You know, I'm reminded of a parable. I read somewhere that once a boy decided to outwit a wise man. He caught a butterfly in his palm and decided to ask him if the butterfly was alive. If the wise man said yes, the boy would shake his palms and the butterfly would die. If not, he would open them and the butterfly would fly away. When he approached the sage and asked if the butterfly was alive, the sage replied, "Everything is in your hands. So, no matter what I think, everything is in your hands to build your happiness, and I am always there for you." Condition Alex couldn't. She smiled in the dark, looking at the stars, enjoying this beautiful night. Soon she would belong to Daniel, and a new family would be born. She envisioned herself in a white dress and the groom in a white suit. It would be the most beautiful wedding ever, the last thing on Nancy's mind. Before falling into slumber to meet Daniel's family, Doria was preparing like a sortie behind enemy lines, thought about his outfit, consulted with him about a gift for the future mother-in-law. Gift is difficult, Nina said. You should know what she's into. Daniel didn't tell you anything. He said that Miranda had filled the house with flowers and that they wouldn't have a place to live anytime soon. Well, said the aunt, let's add another flower to the collection. I think it won't take up too much space. Only it would be nice to have an original gruel to go with it. Then I'll go to the flower store. No. I have a woman who works for me who has a private collection of violets. She's been fascinated by them all her life. That's where we'll find the exclusives. Her collection is one of the top ones in the United States. There you go. Look at this. When Doria saw this collection, she didn't know what to say. There were so many colors, it was hard to choose from the splendor. I can show you one flower that's very beautiful. Lydia Petrovna said cheerfully. We won't stand together, replied Nancy and Nina. Here's my royalty, the Order of Malta, and I speak to her only in your language. Do you like it? She addressed ours. Very exhaled the girl. Didn't you take out $50 and put it on the table? No, girls, a little cheaper it costs. But the guests were already leaving, holding in their hands like a fragile vase. And gifts to the mother-in-law did not think long and bought a good cognac in a beautiful package. Gifts very surprised Daniel's mother. God, what a violet! And what is the occasion for such expensive gifts? But there was silence in reply when the presents were handed over, and everyone sat down at the table. Daniel's phone rang at the most inopportune moment. What was the habit of coming? To the table with the phone, Miranda was indignant. I realize that it's the norm now, but at least at dinner you can do without it. Doria had known David for a long time, so she was expecting some questions from Daniel's mother. But she didn't ask anything to herself, and about her flowers and the fact that Rada had been introduced to Daniel's friend. A friend, Nancy thought. Strange, hadn't Daniel told her he proposed to her? She looked at me, he was in a great mood, and had no idea what was going on in the mind of his fiancé friend or wife-to-be. And she, smiling, tilting her head toward Miranda, told me Daniel had given me a ring and proposed. And stretching out her hand, showed me the gift. The future mother-in-law's face stretched out. What proposal? Hands, not hearts. Didn't you tell your parents anything? Then why the show tonight? I'm so upset. All in good time. David looked at his son and said what he had in mind. He's getting married. He proposed to Nancy. She said yes. What's not to understand? Why do we have to hear about our son's fateful decision from a stranger? He's been going crazy with the women, said the still silent James, Daniel's younger brother. What women? Watch your mouth, Daniel whispered. Doria furrowed her eyebrows. After watching the whole spectacle, with horror she pulled herself together. Calmly she stood up and took the ring off her hand and without saying goodbye, walked towards the exit. Daniel ran after her and her parents heard a ringing slap from the hallway. The door slammed shut and the apartment was dead silent. I warned you, the father began. Leave that girl alone. She's not for you. She's a diamond in need of a proper right. But not you. I told you. So what? So what if I like her? It's just that men only want what they have to get, and the harder we work for it, the more it costs us. That's your case. Don't go near that girl. Don't wrap your arms around her like you've hugged dozens of other women. I haven't hugged anyone for a long time. I only have one. Well, according to your investigation, I guess she doesn't need one at all anymore. You're my son, and I love you. You have a bright mind, and you could accomplish a lot in life, but you're not choosy. Unfortunately, I didn't notice when you got so down. After school, I loosened my fist, and it showed a huge fist cleaner. If my son was standing nearby, shoved it right under his nose. Get out of my sight and don't touch that girl again. And the girl ran from Daniel's house without even seeing where. And just when she felt her heart was about to jump out, she stopped. Seeing suddenly and realizing that she was in an unfamiliar area immediately called. They almost sobbed. Nancy said, "I'm lost. What am I supposed to do?" "Stay where you are. I'll be right there." Half an hour later, Nina's car was in front of Nancy. She'd never been so happy to see her aunt. Sadistic and shivering. "How did you find me?" Stumbling over every letter and asked Nancy, "Your phone geolocated. I did it because you didn't know Washington at all, and I was just worried about you." "I was what?" "Yeah, it's not important right now." She canceled her aunt, lay on her soft, warm shoulder in the shoulder she had imagined her more than once. The apartment girl burst in first on the move, stripping off her clothes. Of course, Daria had played along. If she said she didn't care about what happened at Daniel's house, she was hurt. Hurt. Grabbing a garbage bag, she gathered up all of her failed fiancé's gifts and tossed them down the garbage chute. If only it were as easy to throw away the bitterness of humiliation and the worst disappointment from her heart. That she couldn't do yet. Nancy stood in the hot rain and wished the water would wash away all the memories that plagued her, tucking her face into her pillow. She lamented that she had met him, fallen in love, and been deceived. Daniel called several times, but she did not answer. Nina awoke at 3:00 a.m. to a noise in the apartment. Seeing Nancy picking up from the floor, shards from a broken cup put the kettle on and without asking anything, invited her to have tea. They drank in silence. Nina did not get into the soul, realizing that the soul is crying, and it should be given time, even with difficulty forced herself to maintain a conversation about nothing and thanked fate for such an understanding and aunt. "Can you imagine?" she started. "Yes, he didn't tell his parents that he proposed to me. I realized it from the casual words of my mother. So what does that mean?" Asked Nina to get her talking and distract her from her tears. "I know I'm an old-fashioned dreamer, but I'm not stupid. He gave me a ring and introduced me to his parents to show he was serious. I'm sure when he saw me off again, he would have suggested we move in together." She would pause for a sip of tea to calm herself down. "And I probably would have said yes because I believed him. Sure, the world wouldn't have fallen apart. Not me first, not me last. But seeing his satisfied, victorious face would have been even more painful." She covered her eyes for a moment. Then, looking at her aunt, she said, "Tomorrow I'll fire from the fist. I don't want to know anything that has anything to do with Daniel." "Take your time," said Nina. "You're a part-time student and you have to work. It's not easy to find a new job as a student. Maybe you shouldn't be so hot. Are you acting like a hurt kid? Give yourself some time to think. You're worried about me, and I understand that. But I know I can handle it." I didn't look at Nancy and think that for all her outward openness, she's friendly and kind. She's stubborn like her father. Washington hardened her and taught her a lot, immediately letting her know back at the train station that she doesn't believe in tears. Had that already decided everything so seriously? Nancy's eyes resembled Dinka's, prickly and cold. "Yes, I've decided so, and I haven't changed my mind." "Well, good. Then I'll support you. I love you so much. And I hope we can do this together. I'll talk to people I know. Might as well rebuild you to a good place." They lay down around 5:00 a.m. At 7:30 a.m. sharp. Both were on their feet. Daria was silent, but it was evident that her thoughts were working. She even wrinkled her forehead. Visibly unwilling to compromise with herself, at exactly 9:00 she was at her workplace, having written her resignation letter and walked towards David. Even from afar, she heard a fist telling someone off for the joints and asking a quite reasonable question: why he should be the one to fix them. Waiting for the end of the conversation, she knocked. "Come in, who's so indecisive?" Seeing Nancy coughing, he did not know what to say to her. "Good morning. I've brought my letter of resignation. Please sign it." "Nancy, what happened yesterday will not affect our working relationship. I respect you very much as a professional, and I'm very reluctant to let you go." "I'm glad to hear that, but I don't want to work here. I want to quickly forget everything that has to do with your son. Believe me, girl, I couldn't dream of a better daughter-in-law for me. You just won't be happy with him. You're a different kind of domestic. He hasn't settled down yet. I don't want him to ruin your life. Thank you, David. I'm not changing my mind. Will you work for it? Well, if you make me. No, I won't. Don't hold it against me. With these words, having signed the application, I immediately began to solve the following problems. In 2 hours, she was free as the wind. Well, that's it. The girl thought and called her aunt. I quit. I don't need to buy anything for home. I have plenty of time now. Well, then buy champagne, ice cream, and strawberries to celebrate. I adore you. Nancy laughed and entered the mall. After picking up various goodies, she headed to the checkout counter. There's a celebration coming up. She heard a man's voice. It was Liam. Hello, Liam. We're celebrating Nina's retirement with you. You quit. Why, if it's no secret? I wanted something more serious. I grew out of my paralegal pants. I wasn't interested in it anymore. That's the reason. Well, it's a good reason when the work isn't satisfying. That's too bad. She couldn't refuse his offer to give her a ride home. How's Thomas? Not bad. He only wears glasses when he's in lectures. He can see much better. He likes to study. I'm just worried that he doesn't have a girlfriend. That's the least of your worries. A guy like that will never have one. One just hasn't found his soulmate yet. Is that what you think? You've seen Nancy? I'm sure he has. Give him a big hello. Tell him to call me sometime, Radha. I'll have a chat with him. And they parted. That evening, they had a bottle of champagne with strawberries and coffee, and at the end of the evening, they sang the song Don't Be Sad. All life is ahead of you. The next day morning, Liam called and offered Nancy a job. Nancy. Liam called. She turned to her niece. Says he's found himself a job. A job? Where and what kind of job? The girl was surprised. Well, call him yourself. What are you doing on the phone? Yes, Nancy, hello. About work, I can offer a place in my legal department. Nina saw the look in Nancy's eyes. And if you don't want it, a good friend of mine has a law office. It's been on the market for about 6 years. They need a lawyer who specializes in family law. That's what I like best. All right, well, you realize you can't take on big cases right away. You're going to have to get some experience as a smart, clean lawyer. So think about it. You're going back to being a paralegal. Well, it's going to be a little different. I can attend trials, if they even trust me to speak. I'll take it. I like it. Where can I come and take down the address of the office? And after thanking Liam, she said goodbye. Why did you refuse Rudlov's job? Nina asked. Thomas works there. You two would be more interesting. I don't understand anything about his construction business. I like family law cases, and that's what I want to focus on. Look, I'll give you the first visa, and then you can get there on your own. They pulled up to a tall glass and concrete building. You had to lift your head high to see the top floor. Liam's friend had his law firm on the 20th floor. The panoramic Babel rose silently to the sky, and Nancy's heart sank. Washington was as if in the palm of her hand. The elevator doors slowly opened. The entire floor was occupied by the firm Verdict. The inscription Ethan Law Office Manager greeted her in large gold letters. There it was, the door to a ticket to life. She squared her shoulders, like she's going on stage, but she wasn't wearing that dress tonight. Today, Nancy was clearly going to get that promised spot. She needed it more than ever. The secretary wasn't there, so she went straight to the supervisor's door. Enter heard about Nancy, a pleasant baritone with some velvet clear timbre. The girl squeezed her eyes shut. What kind of man was he, her future boss? Her palms clenched, but she managed to pull herself together and open the door. Ethan was busy with paperwork, and the girl had time to calm down and take a closer look at him. He wasn't handsome, but he was so confident. She'd gotten the impression he was a tough man for some reason. Well, he was all right. His cheekbones were covered with dark stubble, which made him look elegant. Excuse me. I need to hand over my papers right away. Finally, he looked up at her. He was no more than 35 years old, but the look in his dark eyes was heavy. Her palms were sweating again. She didn't know where to put her hands. Listening to you, he said, standing up and offering his guest a chair. I want to work for you as an assistant family law attorney. He looked at her, barely holding back a smile. What makes you think that's what we need? Well, how did Liam give me your coordinates? But this is different. I owe him a lot, and his request is almost in order. Go to the personnel office, and I'll call there tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll be expecting you. And today is a good day to commend your zeal. You can do it today. Betty, would you come in here, please? I'm about to introduce you to the best lawyer in the world, and you can learn a lot from her. Listen to every word she says, and soon you'll be known as the best family law attorney I know. I can do that. Ethan's ajar. You need a door. Here's Betty, your assistant. Anything you need, we'll take care of instantly. She smiled a pleasant smile, examining Nancy from head to toe. Well, hello, let's go and get acquainted and work happily. Thank you. Already closing the door, Nancy said. The phone rang in her bag. Without looking at the display, Nancy answered it. It was Daniel. Nancy, darling, not hanging up. I can't talk to you. Nothing good-naturedly, Betty said. Talk, go to HR, and then come back. What do you want? I love you, Doria. And I don't love you, got it? And don't call me again and blacklist my ex. I turned off my phone without letting him talk back. He might not trust me. I was so reckless with him. My life would have turned out very differently. What's the point in guessing? Everything that could happen has already happened, the girl thought as she walked. 20 minutes later, she was a lawyer's office. Verdict: Nancy was happy. I should call Liam and thank him. Without him, of course, no one would have taken me on. Returning home, she saw Daniel in the driveway. Is he still hoping to get me back? Then he's an idiot. So where did you disappear to? I freed up a day today to talk to you. What kind of generosity? Let's make eye contact, said the girl. Too bad you forgot to ask me. Well, wait, do not get angry. I'll explain everything to you. Daniel, you purposely pretend that you do not understand the page called Daniel. And she looked at Daniel. And the second, and she flicked the phone, leaving his face as a memento. The police will find it quickly. Okay, Auntie, letting Nancy go, said we won't go near her again. Not only will you not go near her, but you'll keep her safe from other idiots. Because if anything happens to her, it means you did it. I understand if there's a summons from the police. Don't be surprised. I don't throw words around. Let's get out of here. You're not men, are you? Who are you settling scores with? With a girl who doesn't want a scumbag in her friends, went up to the apartment and dialed the number of the Fist Senior. David, good evening. Not dear, I'm not zero and inexpensive. Tomorrow I'm going to the police to write on your son freak. A statement he won't leave Nancy alone and threaten her with freaks like himself. I'll have him locked up. Of course, it will be difficult for me to fight a famous lawyer like you. But I will try, if not to put your son away, then to ruin the reputation of you and your town. She disconnected the phone, giving her fists no chance to justify themselves. Took out a shot glass, poured herself some vodka, and drank it in one fell swoop, without a wince. I was scared for you. My girl, have some water. She was holding a glass of water, which she couldn't even see because of her tears. I was scared myself, but I tried not to show it. Good for you for yelling. If we have to go to court, we'll have witnesses. Aunt Nina, you should be a criminal defense lawyer. No, I'd rather sew clothes. They talked for a long time and went to bed at midnight. In the meantime, Daniel came home a little tipsy. His father was awake and waiting for his son. No sooner had he opened his mouth to say good evening than he was hit by his father's fist. He flew down the hallway in surprise and hit the wall, losing his balance for a second. There was blood pouring out of us and a busted lip. That's the way it is. And if there's a trial and I haven't even lifted a finger to get you out, I won't give you any money. Now you pack your bags and your apartment and you live on your own money. All the girls, the restaurants are over. Get out of here. I guess he is our son after all. Shut your mouth, he yelled at Miranda. You and I raised that monster. You and me. The door slammed and there was silence. Miranda, give me some heart drops. I feel sick. Nina wrote a statement just in case and met her niece from work for a long time. For a long time, Nancy didn't hear anything about Daniel, and then Nina told her that he had started drinking. Where did she get such details? Asked her niece. I met your Fist. He apologized for his son, and then he told me, Well, I don't care. The past must be left in the past. That's the only way. He's a grown-up boy and he can choose his own path. It was a mistake to meet him in the first place. He's so different from me, it's hard to imagine anything else. And I'm not his. We weren't made for each other, and we spend too much time on him. He certainly doesn't deserve it. After the famous events, life gradually returned to its normal course, and everyone went back to their own concerns. Liam did not forget to ask his friend how his ward was doing. And Ethan, how's Nancy working out? She's making progress. Betty's very pleased with her. She's a clever girl and she's a pleasure to work with. But I'm pleased with her too. Pretty, modest, gentle. She's a friend. I know you. You better be careful with her. You walk around like a Christmas tree with women all over you. What do you need her for? A collection. Don't hurt her. Liam, you're not the one with a thing for her, are you? Unfortunately, I'm too old for her. It's fashionable now, by the way. I'm old-fashioned in that sense, said Liam. A young and beautiful woman should have a man to match her. I read it. It was flipped. I didn't like this chapter. I don't like books with bad endings. And if it makes you feel any better, I will say that I was very worried. I cried. But once I made the decision to end this farce, I immediately felt better. I have a new life, a new job, and hopefully a new man. That's it. I'm tired, and roughly moved him. And she entered the entranceway. What was that now? Daniel wondered to himself, did she just ditch me? He wanted to laugh, but he couldn't. His face was sad. At the end of the day, Nancy called Liam, wanting to thank her for her help. Thank you so much. I am very pleased and will try not to let you down. It was a pleasure to help a good person. It has been a month now that Nancy has been working at Verdict Law Office. She has developed a good working relationship with Betty, a terrific woman who was smart, professional, and had a great sense of humor. What was it about the job? She was strict, demanding, but never raised her voice. Tomorrow you'll come with me to the preparation process. All the paperwork so I have time to check it. Okay, I'll do it all. The first rule of Betty is to prepare carefully to protect your speech. There are no little things. It's not only professional reputation that matters, but also the fate of a person. This she always remembered. Her speech aroused attention and interest. She forced the court to doubt the arguments of the prosecution and convinced it of her legal position. Practically, she won all the cases. This trial was no exception. Nancy sat as mesmerized and listened to her mentor. Betty, how beautifully you speak. Not a single word unnecessary. Everything to the point. You're just like an actress. I love it. She looked tired, but satisfied. Another person the lawyer helped to get the truth. She drove Nancy to the subway and turned around to go home. Nina was beginning to worry, and it was taking a long time for her niece to show up today. The phone was disconnected. Putting a warm scarf over herself, she went out onto the balcony. She thought Nancy would come faster that way. It was already quite dark when she saw her walking slowly toward the house. Thank God everything is okay, Nina thought. But she heard Daria talking to someone outside. Did you call for help today? She's to Daniel and you. Good evening, my love. I'm not your favorite and certainly not yours. Let me through. Wait, don't be in a hurry. I've waited 2 hours for you for nothing. And I told you last time, you don't have to come here and wait. You and I have made up our minds. No, you decided, but not me. You can't do this to me. I don't like it. What do you want? Tell me exactly what you want, and I'll be on my way. Do you know what I want? Nina was on the balcony, not knowing what the right thing to do was. It's not like anyone's hurting her. They're just talking. So she decided to wait a little longer. Daniel, I don't want anything to do with you. And then the other one finally spoke up. But she doesn't want you anyway. She's fine. And I think I can do her. You didn't get squeamish after me. Daniel asked cheekily. Why did you sleep with her? Nick said in surprise. I had to work with an axe, and they both started laughing. But you're a scumbag, wishful thinking. I'm telling you the truth. You didn't get so squeamish. But you were after me. Nina quickly dressed, took her phone, and ran downstairs to get Daria. Come on, beautiful, let's go for a ride in the car. and I'll treat these champagne, and then we'll see how we'll have fun further." And grabbing her under the arms from both sides, led her to the car. Ono quickly took her hands off her and shouted loudly to Nina, "I'll go to the police tomorrow morning and file a report on the two assholes who wanted to rape two girls together. And that's gang raping. One asshole I know well." Nancy tried to keep out of sight of her boss. She thought he was overly attentive to her, and she didn't like it. "Doesn't understand why you dislike him so much." Betty reprimanded her. "Sounds like a normal man to me. I'll admit, spoiled by women's attention, he can be a bit of a show-off. But admit it. Intelligent, educated, successful, and to my taste, handsome. What's his charisma when he's in court?" All the women cry. But she even laughed at Betty's words, but remained in her own opinion and still refused when he kindly offered to give her a ride home. When he looked at her, she wanted to fasten on all the buttons. Undressing with her eyes was one of the pleasant things to do. It was like flirting, and he was enjoying it. Only Nancy didn't like it very much. The girl was not blind, not deaf, not stupid, and understood perfectly well why all these persistent advances, these unequivocal glances, and the invitation for a ride. Her opinion that men like Ethan needed other women, more elegant, more experienced, to match such intelligent, successful, and interesting men had not changed. She was afraid of appearing plain, unexciting. And that was what scared her the most. Ethan was her superior, she her subordinate. She didn't want to hear about any office romance. And the memories of her fiancé's grief were still fresh in her mind. But then she noticed that Ethan was no longer so insistent on her attentions, and she calmed down. If she had known that Liam had once again bailed her out, she would have had to call again and thank him for his help. Betty, appearing in court, took Nancy with her more and more often. She saw how seriously and eagerly the girl took her responsibilities, so she allowed her to participate in the proceedings. Mostly it was an opening statement, stating the agreed position with the defendant on the claim and the manner in which the evidence was to be examined. Nancy was quite good at it, which pleased Betty very much. It was the last year of her studies. Natalia Bolotova was still the best student. She was on her way to a red diploma, but there was some subjectivity in the dean's judgment that correspondence education was not as effective as full-time education. And it was still necessary to prove that it was at least not worse, and maybe 100 times better. Having practical experience behind shoulders, if I'm alive and well, I'll come to you for my state exams and let them give you a B. Thanks, Betty. I'm getting straight A's. Summer was about to start in Washington, but the only way you could tell it was almost June was by looking at the calendar. A cold wind. The fog gave no hope of warmth anytime soon. Maybe it's for the best, thought Nancy. It would be less frustrating to sit at the textbooks. Sunday afternoon was drawing to a close. Doria was preparing for the decisive battle. Betty showed up for the final exam. When Nancy saw her, she was more nervous than she had been in front of the board. We know such a student. The chairman of the committee began to joke. But why did you come for a red diploma? I came for Peter's knowledge. And will you decide whether to give me a red diploma or a blue one? And she looked at the committee. Betty gave her a thumbs up when there were no questions left. Peter offered to ask additional questions, but everyone refused, saying that the answers on the ticket were so complete that there was no point in torturing the student. Congratulations to you, Zolotova, you have worked hard. We got a letter from the law firm. The verdict is they're happy with you too? That's commendable. It's been a long time since we've had a student like you. Thank you. And she all ran out of the hall, facing the window, so that no one saw her tears. The girl gave vent to her emotions, unable to cope with her feelings. She couldn't believe it was over. For 5 long years, day after day, she had been proving to herself and her parents that she had not left her parents' home in Washington for nothing, that they could be proud of her. It was only so it seemed that everything was easy and simple for her. In fact, she was as taut as a string that could just burst at any moment. Warm hands rested on her shoulders. She didn't have to look around to know who it was. Betty, her favorite lawyer, a smart, beautiful woman, had given her so much during this time. You did well, Nancy answered so well, I would say beautifully. She turned to her with tear-stained eyes and a red nose. "I wanted to be like you while speaking at the trial. You did better, my girl. You have a great future ahead of you." She hugged this small and so strong in spirit woman. "Thank you. It's all credit to you. You're exaggerating. You don't even realize how much talent you have in you. Your parents gave it to you. Come on, let's go. I'll take you home. You don't have to be at work today." Nina congratulated her tonight. Her sister's parents called and yelled into the phone. And later, Liam called, "Congratulations to a promising young lawyer on graduation. You did good, girl, proud of you." She was biting her lip to keep from crying when Thomas answered the phone. "Doria, I'm so happy for you. Congratulations on such a triumph in absentia rarely. Or maybe you've never gotten a red diploma. In my memory, you're the first person to get a gift. Thank you, Thomas. I'm so tired. I just felt it now. I can imagine. Studying and working are always difficult. And studying and working hard is almost impossible. But you did it." Nina went to the kitchen for tea and cake. And when Dashka came in, she was already asleep, covered with a blanket. Slowly turning off the light and covered her with a blanket. She went to rest too. Nina was so worried about her that she took the exams together with her. And how would she know all the articles on which she was going to imprison the scum she knew? So her niece knew. In the morning, opening her eyes, she did not grab her books, but thought how good it was. God, it feels good. So good that lying on the couch I don't want to think, speak, or move. She wanted to be in this wonderful state of happiness and dumb idleness. She had never felt so wonderful. "Nancy, are you going to work?" Nina shouted to her. "Yes, I am." She was driven to work by her aunt because she seemed distracted and not attentive. At her workplace, there was a huge bouquet of white roses and greeting cards. Later, Ethan himself came into the office and congratulated her on her excellent graduation. "But all of us are now a past stage for you. You'll start your own firm. Come on, Ethan, I still have a lot to learn. Betty hasn't told me all her secrets, so if you don't fire me, I'd like to work for you again." "We'd be honored," and he bowed theatrically. She looked at Betty. "What am I supposed to do today? Are you going to work on your own from today?" "No, I can't do that yet." "And you will." "I'm right here. Here's an interesting case for you. Figure it out, think about it. How are you going to make your line? And then you and I will talk about it." "Betty, Maffei, I said get to work." She squared her shoulders, took a deep breath, and opened the first case of her life. Now that she had nowhere to hurry after work, she liked to walk, to think. Turns out there's so much beautiful stuff around. And all this time she was running somewhere, hurrying, and saw nothing around the embankment, along which she walked, renewed. Beautiful benches stood in the shade of trees. On them sat couples in love and kissed. She gawked at those brave ones. Guys, when she came back to her senses, Thomas was standing in front of her with a girl. She was holding him under her arm and his hands were in his pockets. "Also hello," shouted the young man loudly. "Hello, Thomas." A very different man stood before us. It was no longer that subtle boy who was afraid to let go of her hand, but a man interesting, intelligent, tall, well-groomed, and handsome young man with his dark hair played by the wind. He was wearing glasses and a sun that was very stilted. "I can't see your eyes," the girl said. Athletic, trim at least 6 feet tall. Wearing jeans that sat on him like a model. He looked great. Alex tilted his head. He was admired. "You've changed a lot, Thomas. It's been a long time since we've seen each other, and I'm amazed at the transformation a man can undergo." He laughed his teeth with a smile and said that Doria also changed, became even more beautiful. After these words, the girl started tugging him and reminding him that they were late. "Can I come to your place tomorrow evening?" "Sure, we'll buy. Don't buy anything. I'll bring everything myself." "All right, I'll wait," and kiss her on the cheek, and they broke up. "Handsome," thought the girl, walking away from Thomas. "It's nice to see such a handsome and well-groomed man," thought Nancy on a scale of 1 to 10. "I'd rate his looks a 15. Who's that chick? Look, what kind of girl is she to you? She went to school. She graduated with honors. Chicks are all over Chinatown. They're on the highway. And she's a hard worker and a smart girl. All right, you just looked at her like you've never looked at me. That's why we're twitching. Look, I never promised you anything, and you know it. Up until today, you were fine with it. What happened today? Nothing happened. And she pulled her hand out. Jean, do you need something to do? Hanging around in boutiques and beauty salons all day, it's boring. I'd like to go to college, learn the basics of business, and open my own beauty parlor. And why do I need this headache? Pouted lips. Girl, my father gives me so much money that it would be stupid to work. Your father's a smart man. Thomas said he got the business off the ground. What can you do for yourself? Nothing. Also, maybe she's already a lawyer. Or maybe you've had enough. I hope you're kidding. It takes a relationship to get bored, which you and I don't have and can't have. We always have been and always will be friends. I get it. Let's go get you some ice cream. And this Nancy is yours. You like her? You can't not like her. Yeah, fuck you. The girl was turning around. I'll go get her and kiss her ass. I don't want you, asshole. How tall are we in this relationship? Thomas remarked. He was glad he got rid of her so easily. His father would not be happy, of course. He thought, but it's beyond me. Listening to cases work every night, the beauty parlors. And he remembered a conversation he'd had with his father. Son, she really likes you. Take her out. Go to a movie, a restaurant. Maybe you'll get something. You're always at the same institute. Work. That's all your joy. I don't like her though. Well, listen. A beautiful girl, well-dressed, in love with you? What else do you need? I have to like her. I understand Greg is your partner. You want to make him feel good. But please don't do it at my expense. And he was glad he met yours. How beautiful she's become. I like her. The very first time we met. Before I even saw her, I already knew she was beautiful. She's mine, and I feel it and different. I don't need anyone. What matters is, does she need me? That's the question. We'll find out tomorrow. I'm not the blind kitten who needed her hand anymore. Thomas found his car and spent the whole drive home thinking about what to get Nancy for graduation. And Nancy was already home and telling Aunt Nina about meeting Thomas. You know, he's gotten so handsome, so tall, so broad-shouldered. Who, you'll be missed. I see you're finally paying attention to him as a man. She looked at her niece and saw that she covered her face with her hands and blushed. What will cook? He said not to cook anything, he would bring everything himself. Well, of course, if women always listened to men, nothing good would happen. So we're gonna make dinner, and we'll decide if it's useful as we go along. Nina came home early from work, cooked the specialty meat, baked a pie, and swore off light soldiers. Thomas rang the doorbell. 7 p.m. sharp. First, Nancy saw the packages, boxes, and flowers. And then a smiling Thomas. He was taking out the gifts he had brought. They sat at the table like a family. Thomas was at ease, talking a lot and making everyone laugh. Nina thought it was a pity that Liam wasn't there. Liam, hello. Not Zero. Hello, what's wrong? Nothing. I want to invite you to come and visit us. Thomas came to congratulate Nancy on her graduation. She didn't get a chance to say anything. Thomas, at your place. I thought he was. Oh well, no thanks. I'm not home yet. Well then I'm sorry, what's the problem? Liam was angry at his son, wasn't he? No, he had his own way of doing things. I'll have to talk to him again. He's in a bad mood. He had hoped that when Thomas left that it would be too late. Liam thought he was dating Jenna after all. Nina's mood had fallen as well. There was no need for Thomas to play a double game yet. Only late at night, when they went out on the balcony, were the young people able to have a heart-to-heart talk. Why do I feel like I've known you for 1,000 years? Looking at her, he asked, because you really have. We met at a difficult time for you. And where were you while I was living without you? Leaning her hand to her lips, Thomas asked. I was there for you, and I guess I was waiting for you to become what you are now. And maybe I'll surprise you when I tell you that I'll always be there for you if you want me to be. I already do, Thomas replied immediately. Recalling the parable Nina had told her, she replied, Everything is in your hands. And the only thing that scares me is that it's all happening so fast. Quickly, the boy wondered. I've been pining for you for 5 years. Don't tell me you haven't noticed. I won't say flirtatious under his scrutiny, Nancy said. Because I did notice something, but it wasn't the time. Then you took offense at me and didn't call for a long time. And then we were both busy. Yeah, I was studying. And you're Daniel. At the mention of that name, Daria shuddered, unable to cope with her emotions, put her hand on her chest, and took a deep breath. Please, don't ever think of him again. Okay, I won't, even though I've been following him on social media. He's going through a rough patch, but I'm guilty of something too. Never blame yourself, he argued, emotionally confident. He's just weak and a coward. He should have at least admitted to himself that he wasn't worthy of you. You were just too good for him and could do without it. He chose his words for a long time, then waved his hand and added that he was afraid that he couldn't do without you. He must have loved you. He finished as if he had hammered the last nail in the coffin lid. And they never remembered that hero named Daniel again. They stood admiring the night Washington for a long time, until Nina reminded them of the time. Thomas, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Don't try to solve all the problems tonight. You'll still have time. I'm sorry, Nina Ilyanikna. Really, I have, and I'll go. You'll see me off. Hearing this, Nina smiled and thought, where are my 17 years? Standing by the door and saying goodbye, Thomas really wanted to kiss her so Daria wouldn't see his trembling hands. He hid them in his pockets. I don't know why I lived without you for so long and waited for something. Probably to meet me on the promenade. She hugged Thomas herself, thus giving the young man courage. I love you, Daria. And gently touching her lips, I kissed her until tomorrow. Nancy, you go to bed. And I left my papers in the car. I'll go out and get it, Nina said. Okay, said the girl. Thomas, I called Liam. I wanted to invite him to our house, and I must have ruined everything. Were you supposed to meet Jenna or Xenia? I don't really care what her name is. I'm warning you, if you play your game behind your niece's back, you'll be sorry. Nina Ilyanikna, I'll never hurt Alex. I love my father very much. He did and does a lot for me. But whom to love and whom to marry, I will decide for myself. And no one will take me off that path. I heard you. Let's hope it was spoken from the heart. Don't even doubt it, smiled the guy and walked away. He drove through the night Washington and thought about the upcoming conversation with his father. The time was 3 o'clock when Thomas pulled up to the house. No lights were on in the windows. No one was waiting for him. Well, that's fine. The morning would be wiser in the evening. Let his father's resentment fade. But as he passed Liam's office, he saw the light. Thomas, come and see me, his father called him. We'll leave all the questions till tomorrow, it's too late. The son answered grudgingly, and I prefer not to leave for tomorrow what needs to be done today, especially yours. Tomorrow is already 3 o'clock. Sit down, showing a look of displeasure. Thomas sat down in the chair, I'm all ears. Liam paused for a moment, but it made no impression on his son. He waited a little longer. He waited, pondering his words. He began to speak, son. I have asked you very much to be gentle with Jenna. Give her a little hope that someday you might be together. Dad, I asked you not to meddle in my personal affairs. I'll decide who I'm with and who I love. And it sure as hell ain't Jenna. Why, after marrying Mom for great love, you're forcing me to be with that stupid, empty-headed girl for whom the most important values in life are a label with a famous brand written on it. Why do you love your Greg more than your own son? You're ruining my life. Answer me the question that's been plaguing me. Why didn't you go easy on Charlotte? Give her that little hope that someday you could be together. Liam, of course, understood the sarcasm with which his son asked this question. I couldn't stand her. How do I understand you? Thomas answered readily, because I also can't stand your Jenna. I love Alex, and you know it. I just really like her. It's when you suddenly realize that this is the one you've been waiting for all your life. I fell in love first with her voice, her hands, her personality, and only then did I see her. And I don't need anyone but her. Yesterday, I realized that she likes me too. So please leave me alone. There's no point in arguing with me. I want you to accept everything I've told you. I can go to bed now. Dad didn't say anything. and Thomas understood it as consent. Liam had nothing against Dasha. She's a good girl, and a better wife for a son would be hard to find. But he and Greg had decided to pool their capital. It would strengthen their position in the growing construction market and make their competitors respect their interests. But after talking to his son, he realized he had to say goodbye to those plans. His son's question echoed in his head. Why do you love Greg more than me? That's crazy. How could he not love Thomas? He was even a little ashamed now for pushing him. The spasm that came to his throat made him drink a volleyed glass of water and feel ashamed for forcing his son to deal with his problems. Walking up to Thomas, who was still awake and crouched on the edge of the bed, Liam said, I thought that if I insisted on my proposal, you would suffer and I would worry that I was being dishonest. I should probably be ashamed of what you thought of me right now. Father, I love you very much and will always be grateful for what you do for me. But I will live my life my own way. Nancy was also awake. On the contrary, the road went out on the balcony. She tried to remember every word Thomas said, every gesture he made. She remembered the smell of his perfume and silently prayed with happiness. The girl thought she had the right to say that he was hers and she was his, and they were born to be together. From behind, quietly came Nina and threw a warm plaid over her. He's a good subject, the aunt said, as if Doria was against it and that one was coaxing her. Decent, caring, and he loves you. After what date do you think he'll pull me into bed? Nancy asked. If you're in a real, fulfilling relationship, I think he'll wait until you're ready for that. I'm ashamed, but I'm ready. Why would you be embarrassed? You just trust him. He has convinced me that I am the one wanted, the one loved, and I believe in his sincerity and fall more and more in love. He helped me believe in myself again after Daniel, and I am grateful to him. But if he deceives my expectations, I won't survive it. Peter's eyes and tears welled up. You haven't started a relationship yet. You're about to end it. You'll be fine. Honey, are we gonna sleep in tonight, or is it time to get ready for work? It was 500 hours. At least get a couple hours of sleep. They passed out right away, but they both slept in for work. Nina allowed herself a day off, and Daria went out closer to lunch on her phone. There was a message waiting for her on her phone. Good morning. I miss you already. There was no time to reply. She kept her head down until the evening. Firstly, from the fact that there was a lot of work to do, and secondly, embarrassment. Betty understood, and hiding a smile, she said, It happens. Greg turned out to be quite an adequate man, and sided with Thomas. You know, Liam, you and I will merge our capitals, but we won't break our children over our knees. 20 years ago, I was in the same position as your Thomas. Jenna's mother, Christina, was 18. I was a little older. My parents wanted us to get married. Neither she nor I were eager to be married. But we turned out to be more than obedient guys and allowed to play the wedding. We lasted exactly 6 months. Then Christina went for a walk, salons, massages, clubs. I studied and worked. I saw my wife only in the evenings, and sometimes I didn't even see her. Jenna was born. The father-in-law found a good nanny so the daughter wouldn't get tired. When the child turned 5, she came to me and asked me to let her go. Greg, you're still young and you'll make your own life. We never loved each other. Let me go, she said then. I couldn't say anything to her at all. I left and got drunk. When I came back, my daughter was there to greet me. She left her to me. It was only 5 years later that I found out Jenna wasn't my daughter. It was an accident, but I'm not going to tell you that. I don't want to. It's not the kid's fault the mother was a whore, but it's like nature's laughing at me. I left a little faith in my house. She wants nothing, no schooling, no work, no interests but clothes and salons. Who needs her? She's finished school, and that's the end of her life plans too. Thomas is a wonderful guy. I'd love to have an uncle like that. Well, let's not spoil our children's lives. I, like you, realize the absurdity of what we're doing. Hearing his friend's story, Liam was dumbfounded by such a revelation. Does Kate live with you? Are you married? He asked. Kate is a wonderful woman, Greg replied. Kind, affectionate, the exact opposite of Christina. I love her very much, but Jenna does not accept her. She behaves abominably, humiliates her, just squeezes her out of the house. That's what I did on the spot. You hurt the woman you love. That's what I did. Talked to her, brutally conditioned her, and she went to her grandparents to live. They don't know she's not your real daughter. Yeah, I told them when they started telling me I was kicking my daughter out of the house. Well, after that news, they haven't called in a week, and Jenna hasn't shown up. So maybe it's for the best? Liam asked. I think so too. She's a grown-up girl. She can provide for herself. I'll help her, of course, but let her live separately. I also want to have a real family and children, if I can. Kate's 8 years younger than me, and she could still be a mother. I was much happier than you, friend, smiled Liam. A favorite wife, a favorite son. But the happiness was short-lived. But you found the one you loved, and I still can't. You're mine, no contest. Thomas has a girlfriend. There's Nancy, his ex-nurse. Remember I told you about the girl who brought her son back to life? Yeah, I remember. But she even graduated with honors, works as a paralegal. It's rare to find so many good qualities in one person. Smart, beautiful, kind, decent. And you're not in love with her yourself. Greg smiled. Liam answered me right away, and I'll tell you honestly, it's hard not to fall in love with her. But I could never ruin my son's feelings. I'm a grown man, and it's easier for me to deal with feelings. It's not his first. Let them be happy. That's the honorable thing to do. I just don't know if it's right, but it's up to you. And Thomas enjoyed each other's company. He was in a hurry to go on a date with a girl. I'm sorry, I still haven't asked what your favorite flowers are, he said, handing over a bouquet of daisies. The ones you give. This is my favorite. Overgrown from the middle of the bouquet, Nancy replied. They sat in a cafe opposite each other, and the girl, looking at Thomas, thought that she could not be without this open and handsome young man. And the fear of losing him echoed with strong blows on her left side. Probably so secure, fear strikes when you realize there is something to lose. She was back at the cafe when she felt a shake on her arm. Nancy, where are you? Where did you run away from me? I'm just here thinking. I told you I'd always be here for you, and if you wanted me to be. I already want to be there for you. I want to be together. What does that mean? The girl was surprised. It means I'm offering you to be my wife. You know what you're going to say. I won't. She interrupted him. It means that, doesn't it? Yes, I agree, Thomas. Except, of course, it won't be tomorrow. I have to meet my parents, get ready for the wedding. It'll be my first and my last. I understand. Let's start by meeting my parents. Daria couldn't hide her smile. Okay, let's do that. Coming close to midnight, Nancy told Nina that she was getting married. You're crazy. You just started dating, and already you're getting married. I'm completely helpless to his charm, and I couldn't say no. I love his shadow, and I don't want to live without him. Tomorrow you and I are going to meet his parents. And the girls, as if on cue, laughed together. Dad, my fiancée is coming over tonight to meet you. Who is she? Liam asked in surprise. Daria. Liam couldn't hide his surprise. Are you kidding? Why make a comedy out of a serious matter? Don't we know Alex? Come with her to her grandmother's. We'll introduce them to Grandpa better. I don't have to. I'm meeting with a very big client tonight. Where are you sending me to try the method? I don't think you'll be able to use it. But they'll look at your fiancé. They are also members of our family, so they have a right to meet their future relative. Well, I'll go to my grandfather's since I haven't been there in a while. That's right. I'll call them so they can set the table. At least it's sweet. Well, I'm off to work, and they said goodbye, so the son has decided to get married. The man behind the wheel of the car was pondering. He hadn't consulted or talked. He decided it all by himself. Where are they going to live? If he's so independent, he must have found something. And me. And you, Liam, you'll live alone in a 3-story house. Maybe we should sell this house for the hell of it. It was built for a big family of future children and grandchildren. And now you're all alone. Not enough to feel sorry for himself. He heard the sounds of klaxon, and they were different in volume, in melody. It turned out that by hesitating, he was holding up traffic. Excuse me now, as if he could be heard working day, loaded with his problems with meeting and work calls. It was only at lunchtime that he remembered to call his parents. "Dad, hello. Thomas and his fiancée are coming over tonight to introduce you to your future in-laws. Take a look at her, talk to her, let you form your own opinion of her. Then you can tell me. You're not against marriage yourself. Who would ask me? Kids make up their own minds now. So you're against this girl?" No, she's a good girl. You don't know her much. She's Thomas' ex-nurse." "The nurse? What, he couldn't get anyone else for his wife?" "Dad, she's not a professional nurse. She needed a job while she was preparing for college." "And did she?" "Yes, she graduated with honors, and now she's working. But that's something in her favor." "All right, son, let's take a good look at the future daughter-in-law. Let's set the table and have some tea. What else are you going to serve my grandson? We'll decide." To her great annoyance, Nancy was not ready to meet her narrow-minded elders. She had hoped to have a fun an evening at the table with Liam and Nina. She had expected more of a show from this introduction. But apparently, everything was decided there without her. "I don't know what you're so worried about. What could happen over a cup of tea? They're not going to kill you. My grandparents are worldly, and they're bound to like you." All she could think about was how stiff she would feel, knowing how strict these people were and how they would take the news that their grandson was getting married. When they pulled up to the house and were greeted, it was a good thing Thomas was holding her hand, or she wouldn't have known where to put her hands at all. "Hello," Nancy said. "My name is Nancy, but Thomas likes to call me Nancy, and I don't mind." She fell silent, and the two of them stared at her without letting go of her eyes. "But something we had, but what's keeping us at the door? Or are you not happy to see us?" "Yes, of course, please come in." Thomas introduced the grandparents. Once again, said Nancy, "The fighter decided to get married and made our proposal, to which she agreed." "And how long have you known this girl?" asked the grandfather. 5 years already. But it's not like you've been dating for 5 years." Nancy understood where he was going and shook Thomas' hand under the table and began to speak. "Surely you know the circumstances under which we met." "Yes, we see each other very little, if you think me frivolous." "I can understand that. But I love Thomas, so I agreed to his proposal." "Well, let's have tea," Grandma said, sensing the growing tension. There were interesting conversations around the table that evening, and they could well be called a family. Nancy had no idea that Anthony was such an interesting storyteller. And Maria was laughing. Unbidden, Nancy talked about her family, about the aunt she was staying with, and her little sisters about how much she loved her profession. Honestly, with observance of all ceremonies, the young people drank tea, answered all questions, and there was no reason to linger any longer in this hospitable house. In parting, Grandfather said that Thomas had good taste and hugged Nancy and wished her happiness. The table in Liam's living room was festively set. Nina and Nancy were expected tonight. Even in the morning, Liam had given the orders and now watched as they were carried out. The guests had arrived without delay. Now Liam noticed Nina had been living like a recluse since Michael's death, but she's a beautiful woman and smart, running her own business and carrying on her husband's work. "Hello, come in," and he invited everyone to the table. At first, there was some tension. Everyone was silent, staring at their plates, but Thomas diffused the situation. "Alex, I bought you a ring," and he put it solemnly on your finger. "Because I want to live a long life with you. I want your children to be as beautiful as you are, to grow up to be decent people. And for that you must tell me again if you are ready to marry me." She didn't answer immediately, not because she had changed her mind, but because she was wiping away her tears. Liam looked up at her and waited for an answer. "Yes, I agree. I am the happiest man in the world," Thomas said and filled the glasses with champagne. Nina raised to make a toast but was distracted by the ringing of the phone. A couple minutes later she came back and said she had to go to work right away. "There's an emergency. Maybe I should zero in with you," Liam suggested. "No, I'll deal with it." The police are already there and she left quickly. Leaving the three of them, they chatted sweetly, made toasts, until the phone rang again. "Who has it?" Nancy asked. "I think it's mine." Thomas got up to find the phone, leaving the two of them alone with Liam. Alex felt uncomfortable from his stare. "Do you really love Thomas?" he asked seriously and stopped short when he noticed how she opened her eyes wide and looked at him with shock. "Do you have any reason to doubt it?" "I do, because I know for a fact that your heart was beating much more often." In my presence, she flared up like a match and, leaning her palm against my face, said, "When we were only 17. And in front of our eyes is a handsome and successful rich man. We think he's the one and only, and it will be impossible to meet a better one. But it's wrong. My heart could have been shattered, as is usually the case with first love. Foolishly, of course, I was foolish. A girl from the province is a handsome Muscovite. And like any 17-year-old girl, I was dreamy. I thought you were just the prince I was waiting for. But as life showed, our feelings were not mutual. Who said that, and who decides if it's right or wrong? And I decided we couldn't be a couple without feeling guilty about it. You're well into your 40s, but you're still a stunningly handsome man with a strong character. Any woman would be honored to be with you, and you would be honored. If you'd asked me that question 5 years ago, I probably would have said yes and thrown myself at your neck. Now the answer is no. My Thomas is still my Thomas, but thank you for not taking advantage of my crush. You acted like a decent man. Now I doubt that very much." They finished talking. Thomas came up in time, and they had to change the subject. Sitting in his study, Liam pondered the frank conversation with Nancy. He didn't regret asking her those few questions. He realized a lot of things. The difference of 20+ years was huge. In 10 years, she would be a blossoming, beautiful woman, and I would be closer to 60. Miss would talk back to us, and everyone would feel sorry for this young woman. Though Nancy tried to speak calmly, clearly she did not fool me. In her big, beautiful eyes, I saw fear and confusion. Fear that her secret was out, and the confusion. Was she doing the right thing? He remembered how his life had changed since Nancy had arrived. That kind, gentle girl with such a core inside her. I will be happy for my son and help the young family. Such pure impulses and desire arose in Liam after much thought. He saw how his son loved Daria, how she was bathed in this love and attention. His son's words and actions spoke of his great love for this girl. As he left the office, he heard a confession addressed to his fiancée. "I don't know why I lived without you for so long. There's no one to compare you to. You're so one of a kind." His reaction was unexplainable when he saw the guys kissing. All the right smiles, Liam thought, and mentally wished them happiness. She was happy to see her sister's parents, Nana, and of course Betty, at her wedding. The young people didn't want a fancy wedding with hundreds of people they didn't know, but the right people. It was their wedding. So they invited the people they wanted to see themselves. And then he suggested that it be held at the Nancy mansion. I liked that idea. After all, it was her fiancé's birthplace. She kept the warmth of family relationships when his mom was alive. Lots of fond memories of childhood. It is always a pleasant emotion. The wedding dress was sewn, of course, in the House of Models. It was a wedding gift from an aunt. Seeing her parents, Nancy cried and realized that she missed her mother very much. It seemed to her that her mom had aged, and her father was all gray-haired. Daria watched Thomas greet her parents as her father shook his hand, and her mother hugged him and barely reached his shoulders. "Is this handsome man going to be my husband in a few hours?" the bride talked to herself. It just can't be. But when Thomas approached and boldly held her out to him, the doubts faded into the background. He had shown her in a very bossy and bold way that she was only his. She, too, wanted to belong to him to the last cell, to the last breath. There wasn't much time left to wait. And this day so long and exciting and end. In the middle of Liam's wedding, Liam's security guard called. "There's a young man here, says he knows Nancy and wants to congratulate you." "Who is he?" "Daniel Fist is a colorful name." "All right, let him wait." I say so ended the dance of the bride and groom. And now, as father-in-law, he approached the young people. "Nancy, Daniel Fist is here to congratulate you. Come out to him." The girl grabbed Thomas by the arm and looked into his eyes. "Why are you so scared? Let's go together and don't be afraid of anything." "Dashka, where are you going?" asked Nina. There Daniel came to congratulate. I'll go with you. Maybe he forgot something, so I'll remind him. Hearing these words, Liam was not left out. So the four of them went out to congratulate. The men were the first to come out. Where is Nancy? Daniel asked. He was holding a huge bouquet of white roses. You haven't forgotten anything, Daniel. Our statement is at the police station. I won't do anything bad. I loved her. Strange. Of course you were in love. But if you came with good thoughts, congratulations, said Nina. And that's when he saw her. You're very beautiful. Forgive me for everything and be happy. The bouquet was so huge that Liam had to take it away. And the unexpected guest was already driving away from the gate without looking at the happy couple. How did he know about the wedding? Alex wondered. I met a fist, said Nina. He asked how you were doing. And I told him about your wedding. Don't worry, it's fine. How many protectors do you have? Yeah, thanks. More cheerful, said Nancy, looking at her husband and not believing the happiness. The wedding ended well past midnight. The bride was swept off her feet by the screams. Bitter. Her lips were puffy and her feet were buzzing from her high heels. The young people were escorted away, and the guests were still talking about their own worldly things. A timid ray of light penetrated through the curtains, and it was clearly visible how her hair was placed on the pillow, and a light blush decorated her face with a thin blanket, in which she managed to twist, turning over on the other side, outlined the smooth curves of her figure. Thomas has been awake for a long time and admiring his beautiful wife. I am like a fool, lying next to her in the silence. I am absolutely infinitely happy. I'm loved. I'm in love. What could be better? Good morning, my husband. Hello, my good man. It was unusual for them to feel in a new capacity. After a quick shower, they went downstairs to meet their guests. Good morning. Hiding behind my husband now, said Nancy. I didn't give you a present yesterday, said Liam. Here are 2 vouchers for Bali departure. I'll drive you to the airport tomorrow morning. Thomas shook his father's hand, and Nancy walked over to him and stood for a few seconds in confusion. When she got up on her toes, she kissed him on the cheek. Thank you for the gift. Have a rest, said the father. When they returned from their vacation, the young ones wanted to rent an apartment and live separately. When Liam heard this, he was upset. Why do you have to pay money to some uncle? Don't you have enough room in your house? Or am I in your way? He asked with resentment. If you leave, I will sell this house and not keep such a staff of servants. Father, but at some point we will have to start living on our own to solve any household issues and problems we may have, or we will have to live and hide behind our backs. Don't hide, just live. Solve your own problems. I'm not going to interfere with you. Do you, like Daria, agree to stay in the house, or shall we go to the apartment? Thomas looked at her. It's up to you. I go to the apartment. The father also looked at his son with resentment. Do what you want. But I'm putting the house on the market. Where will you live, Liam? Asked Nina, who had come to visit them. I'll move in with you, Liam replied, laughing. I take you at your word. I have a lot of space in my apartment. I wanted to invite young people to live with me, but now I won't. Since you are going to? Why should I take it and come from you, and you can walk to work? Alex and Thomas looked at Nina and wondered. Are you serious? Nancy asked. What are you guys doing renting apartments? Let's go. Guys, I think you're in a hurry. I can't throw away that kind of money and feed someone else's uncle. Maybe it'll be here soon. Do you know how much money it takes? Your father-in-law is not your mother-in-law. He won't interfere with you. Think it over, or your father will sell the house and you'll lose your memories of mom. But here you have air and space. It's beautiful. That's what Nina said. Not zero. It'll be more fun if you move in with us. Oh, come on. What are we going to do about the apartment? We'll move into the apartment. Nancy figured it out. And we'll come over Friday night after work. Nina looked at Liam, and he said, smiling, I agree. That's the kind of castling I like. Move zero. Nana was scared too. After 6 years with Nancy, she didn't know how she was going to live on her own. Who to take care of? Liam had the same problem. So the fate of 3 families depended on her decision. And after some thought, she agreed. From then on, the boys came to Liam's house on Friday like a sanatorium after a week of work. Everyone was happy. 2 years later, Nancy and Thomas opened their own law office in & Co. The guys were doing pretty well for themselves. And 2 more years later, Nancy went on maternity leave. The labor was difficult. Beautiful babies were born, a boy and a boy. Managing 2 was hard, and the young family moved into Liam's house. "Don't worry about a thing," Nina assured her, kissing the baby on the clinic and cheek. "We'll all help." Nancy was falling off her feet and only dreamed of one thing: to sleep. Now Liam felt like he had a real family, a wife, children, grandchildren. That's happiness. Thomas worked for 2 to provide for his family. When the boys were 3, Nancy became pregnant again and gave birth to a baby daughter. The house came alive. Liam and Nina would rush home after work to be with their grandchildren. When the little one was a year old, they announced they were going on vacation. Nancy had helpers. Apart from the children, she did nothing else. But these 3 required so much strength and patience that only a loving mother could endure them. Liam was happy. He was gently hugging his non-zero. He had all the life he wanted, the woman who gave it meaning. Children and his future grandchildren whom he adored. He also knew he was the happiest of all people in the world.